We're in the south end of the county here on the Targeted Economic Development District presentation. Got a few people here on the south end of the county. Getting ready to go here. And we'll back up here. Bear with it. We'll make it be as best we can.
It smelled a lot like it does today. And one of the gals on our group inhaled really deeply, and she said, "It smells like money to me."
Okay, so we will move on to the Community Development Service for the Montana Janet Cornish Windmaker Targeted Economic Development District presentation.
So I'll introduce Janet. My name is Brian Obert. I don't work for the county, but we're a not-for-profit economic development agency. We were here last year, and at the very end of the meeting, you heard several questions about, can we get jobs? Can we get other things that we can keep? You live here, can you keep and stay here and work here? We've been doing some things, I couldn't tell you too much last year, but there's some things that we've been working on to try to bring some jobs and some businesses out to the intersection, out to the south end of Broadwater County. So what we have done is we have actually hired a consultant to help us put together a plan, and we have a business in tow that wants to come out here and spend several $1 million to put in some jobs, kind of an event center, and kind of create more of a knowledge about what's going on and actually create some sense of place about where you guys live right now. It's fairly technical. We'll try to keep it very high level, but it is a mechanism, and kind of the best way to say it is, it isn't if you build it, they will come. What we do is we create a center, and if they come, their money that they spend in taxes then builds it. So it's a little different ramp on how you can actually create infrastructure, which is the reason why we've been struggling trying to get businesses to come here. We've been working on quite a few different businesses trying to get them into the area. Part of it is just a lack of knowledge of the amount of homes and people that live out here, and part of it is a lack of infrastructure. So we have hired Jen and Lynette, and they're going to kind of talk to you about something it's very technical, but it isn't. Jefferson County has two of these tax and finance districts. One is at Whitehall, and the other one is up just outside of East Helena, just over the county line. It's a mechanism so that industry can pay for the infrastructure that they need to actually be here. Yeah.
So thank you, Brian. Can everybody hear me? Let me know when you can't. So again, my name is Janet Cornish, and this is Lynette Windemaker. And members of the commission, thank you very much for letting us speak here tonight. We are, as Brian explained, we're working in partnership with our group contract with the Montana Business Assistance Connection, or MBAC, on behalf of Broadwater County. The things we're going to talk about tonight are all county responsibilities and are initiated through the county in order to generate the kind of business activity that Brian mentioned. So in particular, we're talking about a new economic development district, or targeted economic development district, located in the Wheatland area of the county. Tonight, I'm going to go through the following topics. I'm going to explain what targeted economic development is according to the Montana laws, the financing mechanism that Brian referred to, which is called tax increment, what kinds of infrastructure needs in particular we're looking at addressing or meeting, what needs are we meeting in Broadwater County, Wheatland area, what steps we're going through to get to this district, and then once the district is established, how it will be administered, and then the provisions for when the financing mechanism sunsets, and then we'll try to allow as much time as we can for questions and discussion at the conclusion of the presentation. I apologize for all the text, but what Montana law says is it's important to the people of the state of Montana that we develop economic activity that takes advantage of Montana resources, ag resources, timber, mining, and we build things here. Montana has suffered for a long time from money leaving the state. So this effort by the Montana legislature in the late part of the last century, the 90s, was to create an opportunity for businesses to manufacture, to add value here. So the law says that what we're talking about is targeting value adding, in other words, turning wood into furniture, or into putts. Pardon?
Wheat into bread.
Wheat into bread. Or we're also talking about activity where you add knowledge, so medical research, energy research, where you're adding value to a body of knowledge. So the district that we're talking about, as you can see on this map, this boundary is the proposed boundary. The final boundary will be adopted when the County Commission adopts this plan to create this district. But it has to have a continuous area. In other words, you can't have a piece here and a piece here. The entire area has to be connected. It has to be zoned in accordance with the growth policy. The growth policy in Broadwater County was adopted in 2003, and it has identified this area as suitable for development in commercial and industrial activity. And finally, we have to have a comprehensive development plan that is adopted by the local government, in this case the County Commission, which identifies the types of activities, what kind of infrastructure, for example, in particular, will be developed in the area.
When you say area, how big do you mean when you say area? That's a broad term.
If you want to go back a slide, it's this area right here.
No, but how big, the size? In acres or
Is it about
sections?
1,000 acres?
About 1,000 acres. We wanted to give as big a loop, and then it's going to get a little bit smaller, just because now those people within that small area, that 1,000 acres, will choose to be in or out. So it'll probably end up in the end of about 500 to 650 acres.
So which area is it? But you've got 3 sections on there.
It literally is going to be on the east and the west side of Highway 287 up to our road right out here.
Yeah, it's the outside line at this point.
Why isn't any of the commercial stuff on the west side of the road up there towards the northern part of that? Why isn't any of that included into your map?
I'm going to defer to Brian.
Yes, so we're going to get into those things, but very specifically, part of the reason why that isn't, and this comes back to a couple of the other landowners, is there is one caveat within the state statute, and that they do not like to have or do not allow residential within it.
Well, all that stuff's already zoned commercial.
It is zoned
So
commercial.
why isn't it in your map?
At this point, part of it is because what some of those potential owners may want to have residents and commercial in that area. Now, if that landowner is interested, our problem is to make sure that it's contiguous, and it starts to get somewhat difficult to do it with contiguous. You start to gerrymandered lines, which is something we hadn't wanted to do, but it is something that can be looked at.
Yeah, we can look at that as that again.
Can we clarify what part is being asked? What part are you specifically asking for? You're saying it's not approved?
So I can actually, because I know where it's talking, so as the road drops over, right through here, there's the access into Wheatland Meadows, and this strip right through here is a commercial portion. That's what you're asking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what you're referring to?
Well, and then up to the beginning of where Price Road starts, all that was a commercial too in the upgrade.
Yes.
Let's, right after the meeting, we can visit in the hall too about that.
Yes.
Okay, next slide. So the financing that Brian talked about is called tax increment financing. And the state of Montana says that within a targeted economic development district, the county can use, or if it's a city, the city can use tax increment financing to pay for public infrastructure in support of targeted economic development. And we have specifically identified that as something that we want to do in this plan. And I'm going to explain now what that means. Tax increment financing enables local governments to use the taxes that are paid on new development within a new district. So if you build a new building or new facility, the taxes that you would pay on that anyway are now made available for investments in public infrastructure within that district. So here's the way it works. Sometimes it helps to see things graphically. You begin with, in the red area, a declining or stagnating property tax base. And that, then you pick a start date, which if this passes, would be this year, 2019. And any new taxes that are collected as a result of new investment are isolated from the rest of the tax base and put into public infrastructure projects. At the end of the period with which tax increment financing is effective, then all of that money then becomes part of the base. So what you're essentially, it's kind of a win-win. The businesses are still paying taxes as they would, but they're helping to offset the cost of the infrastructure that's there to serve them. And this is an important point because I've had several questions, phone calls from some of you. Tax increment financing does not increase property taxes. Rather, it affects the way that those tax increases are distributed once collected. It's not an increase. It is the taxes that are being used are those that are paid on new investments in the district.
Excuse me. So the money
Yes.
that you're collecting for this, since it's for the new district, all of that money would stay down at this end, is that correct?
That's correct. But the existing base, the taxes
Right.
everyone's paying now, will continue to go for the whole county and the schools and so forth. And that then when the district sunsets, then that money also will go to the entire county.
Excuse me, ma'am, could you define sunset?
Yes, so Montana statute allows for districts to collect tax. I couldn't see who called out. There we go. Allows for local governments to collect increments for 15 years plus up to additional 25 years if a bond is sold, but never for longer than 40 total. Most of the districts in Montana have been, the longest are about 34 or 35 years generally, but 15 is the number of years unless you create debt, a bond. Let's say you want to sell a bond to finance a sewer system, and that takes many years to pay it back, and until that debt was retired, you could continue to collect increment, but for no more than an additional 25 years. So in the first step in this process was for us working with MBAC, Montana Business Assistance Connection, and the county to determine what were the infrastructure needs that had to be addressed in order to support industrial development. And these are the ones that we identified: transportation, interior roads, also along Highway 287, and then services for truckers, multimodal, where you can transfer things to various for various types of transportation mechanisms. Water and wastewater infrastructure was probably the most significant infrastructure need. We also talked about life safety, fire services and law enforcement, and the need for more services and perhaps even a location in this area. Utilities, broadband, natural gas, electric, and solid waste. And then other kinds of support services, training facilities, satellite government offices, kind of also noted up above, and workforce development activities. So some of the infrastructure is going to be in terms of human resources as well. So when we talk, pardon? Sorry. No, that's all right. So what we're going to do now is, this, as Brian says, it's technical in that it's there's a lot of individual steps, but we thought we could kind of reduce it to a general explanation of each step and then tell you where we are so far in the process. So to date, we have identified a proposed boundary. And again, in answer to that gentleman's question about the actual final boundary that is still somewhat in flux, but we had to find some area to define some area in which we could talk about infrastructure deficiencies. In February of this year, the county adopted a resolution of necessity, which essentially says, hey, this area has public infrastructure deficiencies that need to be addressed. You have to establish a need before you can create this district and a plan for that district. The county adopted that, and then we began work on the completion of the comprehensive, again, draft plan, which is, again, available for public review at the courthouse. And then the next step, which we've prepared, the area has to be zoned. And that's according to state law. In order to create an economic development district, that district has to be zoned in accordance with the growth policy. And that regulation is also available for public review. Once the plan and the regulation were completed, the planning board met to review those documents in order for the planning board to make a recommendation to the county commissioners. And what the planning board found was that both the plan for the district, what we're going to do in this area, and the zoning regulation did follow the growth policy. And again, if you're not familiar with what a growth policy is, it's essentially the master plan for the county. Growth policy came into use in about the year 2000. Before we called them comp plans or master plans. And they're generally the vision that a county has for itself. And according to that 2003 growth policy, the plan, or the plan for this area and the regulation for zoning were ways in which we could implement the intention of that growth policy. That was completed. The planning board made its written recommendation to the county commission about a month ago. So one of the next steps is going to be, we're going to create a final district boundary based on public input. Then we're going to post a public hearing notice, which will be mailed to property owners using certified mail, property owners in the district, but it will also be published in the newspaper, announcing the first county commission meeting, which will be sometime in August. We have a date, the 19th or 21st, depending on your schedule. And at that commission meeting, the commissioners will be considering two things. Number one, a resolution of intent to adopt the zoning regulation. And the second is the first reading of the ordinance to create the targeted economic development district. In the case of the first, the resolution of intent to adopt the zoning regulation triggers a 30-day protest period. And Lynette, do you want to talk about that?
After they adopt it, we'll also have to publish notice of passage of that resolution of intent. And upon the first publication of that notice, that 30-day protest period will start on the zoning. And during that 30 days, anybody that's within the district can come in and make a written protest to against the zoning. And then once the 30 days is over, they're considered in terms of whether how much acreage they have, whether they're agricultural or not. And there's some weird numbers that we have to look up in the statutes. And they could conceivably, if enough people protested, it could stop the zoning for our year.
And if that occurs, then we cannot go forward with the creation of the economic development
Is
district.
this something that's gonna be on the ballot
No,
for the next election?
no.
No, it's an administrative process through the county commission. Yes.
Is that, may I ask what the county commissioners' newspaper do you use for your publications?
Yeah, I was just going to raise that, since a lot of people down here may be getting Threeforks or Bozeman news rather than the Townsend news. Have you given thought to publishing it in local?
I would ask Nicole that question. Can we do that?
Certainly, I think we have to really
The Voice, yes.
as well as Broadway Reporter.
So you use the Broadwater Reporter?
The Broadway Reporter. And where's the journal?
Threeforks.
Oh, okay.
The Lewis and Clark Journal.
Oh, okay. So that's good.
And The Voice.
It's free and it goes to everyone.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, yes.
This seems like it's very intensive in its planning, and so I'm sure you have a budget in the planning. Where is the money coming from to do all of this right now, and how much is it going to cost?
So the creation of the district, the steps we're going through now is through a contract with the Montana Business Assistance Connection,
We pay for it.
and they pay for it. And,
Right. It's one of those things, as an economic development agency, I mean, we have money that comes in and out, and it's one of those things. We have talked with Nicole, we have talked with the original person who drafted the growth policy, that this was one of those mechanisms. Once we got enough critical mass in homes and enough development going on in Belgrade, Manhattan, it became an opportunity to do it. And one of the things that, it's that 15-year window. If you start a district too soon and don't have any growth, it doesn't generate any income at all, it's really for naught. So we've been kind of waiting to get to a point where it felt like we had enough critical mass to be able to launch something that could attract more business.
So that graph you showed that's not how it works then? If you go by your graph, our properties are supposed to be losing value and losing
So
value.
I did, and I heard some people talking about that. There is a difference between a rural TED district and an urban TIF district. An urban TIF district is typically talking about decay in a community, which is that line coming down. For a rural location, it's really talking about a lack of infrastructure. So that component of it, it's kind of misleading in the graph. It
Yeah,
really
and
says that if we don't do something, we won't be able to attract that new business.
Right, and I want to just comment on that. I think that I appreciate that thought, and I think for future presentations, I'm going to take off that declining part. But you do have to make the case that your property tax revenues have been stymied to some extent by the lack of infrastructure.
So do you have a budget though? Because you said the money comes in and out. Is there a dollar amount that we've already spent, and what is going to be spent?
So we're Montana Business Assistance Connection. We're a private non-for-profit. We do lending for small businesses. We have earmarked off $50,000 to be able to do this and some other contracted work for the lawyers, to put the water sewer district in and everything else.
So where do we, the Montana district, the business, get their money from?
So we have 14 different loan funds. We have grant funds that come from the federal government through the Economic Development Administration, through the Department of Commerce. We have additional contracts that we supply services to the state of Montana, and we're a membership
So
organization.
this is federal tax that comes from us back to you guys?
About 1/8 of my budget comes from the federal government.
Is our tax money paid? The people in this room?
People in this room, of my entire budget, it's about 1%, 1.5% of my entire budget.
Who's gonna, what percentage of the infrastructure of these businesses gonna be responsible for?
They were going to be responsible for all of it. It will then generate a water sewer district, which is our biggest deficiency. The people who use it are the people who actually own it. So it is their responsibility and their liability for it exclusively. So everybody else, unless you're physically in it, hooked to it, you won't be paying for it.
Okay, so we are then at this, this is what is going to happen next. If the resolution of intent and there isn't adequate protest, then we will go forward with the creation of both the zoning commission, the zoning district will be adopted, and then the final reading on the ordinance for the plan, and that will be adopted. So we'll have, and that will occur sometime in October or November. It has to be completed 30 days before the end of the year in order to take effect this year with a base value of January 1, 2019.
Excuse me, is any of this based on already proposed expansion or growth for that area?
Say again?
Is any of this based on already proposed expansion or growth for that district or that area?
If the increment, any growth that occurs this year between January 1 and December 31st of 2019, whether it's new investment or expansion, all of that would become part of the increment.
So is there already proposed expansion for that district area though?
Yes.
Okay, and can you fill us in on what that may be?
Yes, I can.
And
Last year I could.
say how much of that area would be occupied by what's been proposed?
So right now, in Bozeman, Bridger Brewing has bought the 250 acres that are across the highway out here. They have a commercial, it's a production brew house that they're looking at. So something about 60,000 barrels per year is what they're trying to grow the building to. They will be actually doing custom brewing for some of the smaller breweries within the state and custom canning. So they're going to have a $1.6 million German canning line and things like that.
How will that affect our water table?
Right now they're using existing wells that are on that, and that is one of the things that that's some of the next steps, is looking at the water rights. Part of the reason why this didn't happen as quickly as possible is because we were trying to determine where we had good water. They don't just need water, they need pretty good water. And it isn't until you kind of taper off the edge of that property when you actually start to get into the river aquifer, and it's a bit different than everything else coming from up here. It appears, just because of the chemistry, the water's going to be coming a lot from kind of the valley recharge.
Aren't they drilling out there already? Aren't they just drilling just now, like those wells weren't existing? I didn't hear a question.
So there are existing wells that are feed wells right now. They've been using those to actually take their samples, and those have been in. They will probably start to do some drilling in the next 90 days. Is there one right now? Okay, that's good. I was asking them to tell me when they were going to start, and I didn't know quite when. And it is going.
So we're going to move along because we want to make sure the commissioners stay on their schedule, and we'll try to hurry this through and then have a few more minutes to answer questions. So some of you have asked us about, in any public process, sometimes people feel left out of the decision making. So we wanted to, we have been up here several times talking to people and making presentations, but we wanted to kind of give you the kind of catalog of meetings that we've had to show you, that we have been active working on this since August of last year. And actually even before that, Brian and Eric were making presentations. So beginning in May 14th of 2018, the Montana Business Assistance connection made presentation at the county commission meeting about, as Brian mentioned, kind of a pre-game discussion of this. On May 30th of last year, MBAC also made an introductory presentation to the planning board. And then June 6th, also talking to folks here at this site about concerns and about the potential creation of a targeted economic development district. Our first meeting was in a site at Three Forks. I can't remember, it was I can't remember that building.
Yeah, right as you go into.
Right as you go into town.
Understood.
And some of you were there, I know. October 29th, we had kind of more of a staff meeting with some of the people that are, the staff of Broadwater County and MBAC, and there were also some property owners that asked to come, and we talked through the process. And then, again, we mentioned that on February 4th, the County Commission adopted the resolution of necessity, in other words, identifying that there is a need for infrastructure at this end of the county. We had another meeting on March 1st, which was on the zoning regulations, and quite a few of the property owners came and talked about concerns. We had talked about just making this area industrial only, but there was a lot of interest in having it be commercial and industrial. Again, this law, this provision is intended to help industrial businesses, but it doesn't preclude from some commercial businesses located in the district. On June 10th, as I mentioned, the planning board met and made its recommendations to the commission. And then we have today's meeting to answer questions and to kind of bring everyone up to date. And then they actually signed. We have the 17th here, but actually they did go ahead and sign it on the 10th. So there's the July 10th meeting, and then we're hoping for the week of August 19th, as I mentioned before, for the public hearing on the zoning and the resolution to intend to adopt the zoning regulation, the public hearing on the district, and then the first reading on provisional adoption of the TED ordinance. Then we have the protest period, and then the final adoption of this regulation and plan.
Do you expect any of those to be here or at the county?
We would do whatever the council should. We have not, it would make sense to have it here in order to facilitate easy public access to the hearing, but that will be the decision of the commission. So throughout this process, we said all of the property taxes essentially the new property taxes collected would go into a fund for public infrastructure development. So it's important that we alert the other taxing jurisdictions. The county levies property taxes, but so do the school district and the fire district.
Yes.
So that we've been talking to them throughout the process. We've explained it to these other jurisdictions, and I know Brian's made several contacts with the other taxing jurisdictions, because again, while no one is giving up any property taxes, we have sort of a delay, so to speak, until we recognize all of these new property taxes because of these infrastructure costs. Ready? So once, if the county commission adopts this targeted economic development district, assuming that the zoning regulation is adopted, then all of these materials will be sent to the Montana Department of Revenue, which monitors property tax collections and distribution, and will make sure that we have gone through all of these steps, again, which are set forth in the Montana Urban Renewal Law and state statute. The department might ask for additional information, and then it'll finally certify the base, tax base as of January 1st, 2019, if all goes well.
2000.
Where this one, that was supposed to be 2020. And how many of us looked at that and didn't catch it? Thank you. Once the district is adopted, the county commission has a number of choices into how to administer the district, how to make decisions about how money is spent. It can, and it has authority on all the budgets. So all the money that is spent in that district is under the purview of the county commission. So it would be a line item in your budget. Any planning, you're responsible for planning, for project development, and annual reporting. The state of Montana in the 2017, I think it's 2017 legislature, came up with some very specific requirements for reporting. Essentially, most governments already do that as part of their annual report to the state. You may choose to appoint an advisory board for the TAD. We've helped Jefferson County create 2 districts like this one, and in those cases, the county commissioners appointed an advisory board that handled the day-to-day decision of planning for infrastructure. They also have a revolving loan fund, which the state provides for. But the final authority always rests with the commission. You can also have day-to-day stuff. You can have your county staff do this work. Again, going back to Jefferson County and in Lincoln County, we've seen it where the counties have turned the management over to their local development group. So that would be similar to Brian's. Bear Paw Development and Havre administers those programs there. So you can do it, but again, repeating myself, it is the county commission that has the ultimate authority for approving projects and for signing checks. So, and to go back to your question, a tax increment provision, the district can continue, but the ability to use tax increment financing ends at the 15th year or after all bond debt is retired. If you establish a revolving loan fund, okay, if you lend money to private businesses for private infrastructure, then that money is paid back and you can reloan that in perpetuity. And again, that's set forth in the statute. Next slide. So that's, we have about 10 or 12 minutes more on our agenda item, and we'd be happy to field any questions.
I have one. Mr. Ober, would you be eligible for that professional services contract that you just spoke of?
You know, we could be. I prefer not to be.
Don't you see a conflict there with your
Yes,
guy sitting on the
I do. Actually, I see a conflict in other ways. Right now, we have Eric is our community development person in our community, and what we have found in Helen and the urban areas, it makes more sense to have the actual decisions in your hands. We really want nothing to do with it. We would prefer, though, I mean, anything that we can do to help to create loanable funds for businesses to be located either in the district or in the area. We want to do that for you, but we really do not want to touch the actual management.
Members of the commission, do you have any questions?
I have one thing I do want to step. We have been so fixated that we have a lack of sewer in the area, and we have issues with the amount of clay in the ground that makes it difficult for some of our traditional sewage septic tanks. The other property that's commercial, it was in some of our original items, but looking at trying to pump sewage from down there to get back up here, that's what my mind was fixated on. Now, if there's something that we can do to help those businesses and we want to expand, we should address that right now.
Yes, sir.
I would like to say, is there a process we would need to do to get an advisory board? Because I have 2 businesses on Wood 7th, and that's a TIF district as well.
It is.
So I have dealt with TIF monies, TIF dollars, and the process to go through getting them from the city, and it's not so easy, and so it's better if there's an advisory board that can reach out to the community and say, these are the steps you need to do to petition funds. If you do this or do that, but we need a contact, and the county commission is not enough, because I know what we went through in Bozeman, and I know it won't be enough here as well.
Right, so what would be the process would be if the commission decided to appoint an advisory board, they would probably ask, if I'm better used to the approach, but I would guess they would take letters of interest, and then we can we can certainly provide assistance at that point. We've assisted several advisory boards in counties in setting up, but there's some really good models out there for setting criteria for projects and developing good recommendations.
And I'm glad you brought that up. It really should be in your hands. I mean, it's the best way to make it work. And one caveat I do want to say is we can't do things if you live out here in Rolling Glen or everything else. But we can do things on the property that can be beneficial to you. We are trying to find out what the cost will be to bring fiber, get a fiber node out here so we can potentially improve some of the connectivity issues. We want to work directly with the fire department and have a station that has water in it. We've been working with Brandon and Wynn. We need that satellite sheriff's location down here. This is a way that the business can help to build something that creates infrastructure for you, legitimately using this structure or this financing component, but you can't do anything out into your area, but also we're not affecting your taxes because of this. So it's a very definitive separation.
So and again, any property owner existing in the district will not pay any new taxes as a result of this. The only new taxes will come from
Unless they go bankrupt.
from new development.
But that's the problem is, I mean, the state statute doesn't allow it. And very specifically, again, the part of the reason why they keep the commission or the city council and the advisory board kind of at heads with each other is they don't want them to be spending on frivolous things. Ideally, what we would like to do is get the infrastructure that we need in place and then sunset the district. So we want the money to be going to everybody that we can. We need to get enough to get those businesses here.
So, and when you talk about fiber, public infrastructure in the law includes publicly owned infrastructure as well as utilities like gas, electric, phone, and rail. So they're for public use, but they're owned privately. Yes, sir.
So how about like fire emergency services, sheriff, and that kind of thing? Because I would imagine with, I don't know, 300 random acres, and that's just one private individual group. And so out of 1,000 acres, you felt like there would be 500 to 600 that would be used in this proposed plan, and they've got 2/3 or 3/4 of that property already.
Right now,
I'm just, because it seems as though there's kind of an issue with the distance from some fire and sheriff.
yes.
And so how that benefits.
So you can, we have seen using these tax increment funds, if I'm understanding your question correctly, to pay for infrastructure for fire safety. So a project could be considered, as long as you can show that, let's say you build a new fire hall, for example. As long as you can, the part of that fire hall that's going to be serving the needs of this district could pay a portion of that then. Let's say that new fire hall is going to have 30% of its calls in the district. You can justify paying 30% of the cost for that fire hall.
But all the infrastructure leading to it has to be kind of put in place. And again, that's one of the things that Daryl's been kind of beating up Bridger Brewing, and they've been very good to this point. They're donating property for the sewer plant and for the fire hall, sheriff's location. So we're going to have properties because they know that they need to be a good neighbor for you, and it helps their insurance if we have that fire hall with fire suppression sitting right there, which also should help you on your fire guard.
But we're proposing that it would still be up to the county commission to make those decisions.
And I want to add too that later tonight on our agenda, we are going to talk about emergency services building that we're proposing in the future. So hopefully we can answer some of those questions then as well. Okay.
So one more question. We're all addressed to Threeforks. Are we going to change the name of our town? Is there a reason that we don't work more with Threeforks Fire District so we build that up as a big unit instead of having two separate ones just across the county line?
Well, as of right now, the people that would be south of Highway 101 out there, you are from Threeforks.
Okay. But this is all south, right?
This will all be in.
Okay, so is this gonna be a 3-4 fire district then? Okay.
Yes.
It is now.
It
What do
is
you call it, weakness, I don't know if we were changing it to the county or what?
No, it's one of those small details within the law. We can't go over county lines. So we have to identify this as something, and if we called it Three Forks, there's a certain amount of
Yeah, Three
issues
Forks
that
is
I
in
know
Yellowstone.
Cory wouldn't want to hear, so we came up with, you are called actually as a census designated place as Wheatland right now, that's been in place for 20 years, 10 years. It's just a means so we can actually identify what Department of Revenue and everybody else.
If you have a question?
Well, based on the comment earlier about not wanting residential in the 10, is the zoning proposal going to be to not allow residential anywhere within the 10? Is that
Correct.
correct?
With the exception if you had a caretaker's unit on the industrial. But no.
Security facilities.
Security, you potentially could have living quarters in the fire hall in the sheriff's little satellite location.
I saw someone, yes ma'am.
I'm just curious, you said school tax funds would be delayed. So would the school taxes not come out of that money until after the 15 years?
That's correct.
Okay, so you're
Okay,
going to
but
put
they
people into a
continue-
school district,
They would continue to get all the money they're getting now. It would
but
be-
not for the new development.
That's correct.
Have you looked at the school district? Do you know what's going on there? You put 200 more homes in there and...
No homes.
Or 200 more people in...
No people.
Yeah, but what do you think, what do you think is gonna happen if you add that additional amount of infrastructure for businesses? Where do you think those people are gonna live?
But if they buy their houses, so let me say there's a happy ending to this. Since they can't put their house in the district, they're gonna buy a house that's somewhere else in the county, and you'll have all that new tax dollars coming in for the schools.
So we're right by.
All of
Three Forks,
those tax dollars going to schools.
we
It's
can't
only the
guarantee
industrial
they're gonna live
development.
in Broward County, they could all live in Gallup County, and then we don't get any money from them, so.
But now the one thing to remember is for school funding, most of the school funding is called A&D. So it's a school, about 90% to 92% of the funding comes from the student actually sitting in the seat.
Right.
The county tax is then added on top of it. Your home, if it's here, but if it's somewhere else in the county, they're still in the school district, just like they are in the fire district. Those funds have to go into the school.
But the
Businesses
equalization
support the
sends
district,
somebody.
and if they're not
Yes.
going to get that for 15 years,
Which is the
our
reason-
school's in trouble now.
Yes, that is part of the reason why this is the hard decision, and part of the reason why we weren't thinking of extending too far, is we want it to be very managed, because we know it has, that one is the one specific caveat that creates some heartburn.
But I'll tell you something, the theory, wait, give me a minute. The theory is that you already have a declining situation in schools. And what this is that it's going to take some time to build that economy up so that we get more revenue.
But our economy's not declining, our economy's as high as it's
And the
been.
growth in the school is going up.
So where is the problem in the schools then?
We're overcrowded.
And that's, part of it is we're kind of assuming you're going to be overcrowded whether we do this or not. And that's why we've been talking with Jeff a bit about this. It isn't going to help, but we think that the key is once we do get past, when we actually sunset this, all of those dollars come back in, and if we can do it right, it's going to be a big thing. Your problem is your issues today. If we can get past that, those dollars that are on 7th could be out here. And that's one of the things that we want to say is, if you have businesses that are in Bozeman or someplace else that you want to see them out here, let us know. If there's a business that is potentially interested, if we can create infrastructure to create the jobs and build the district faster than our need to pay back the debt, some of that can be just added back in. So there's some caveats that can be done. I think the one thing that we've been talking is Bozeman somewhat has a habit of kind of wanting to be seen fishing. From what we have heard when we have meetings out here, you guys your kind of sense is you want to go fishing. So the idea is let's do what we need to do in infrastructure to get the jobs here, and then with the idea that we sunset it and just let this thing start to move forward. But it's going to be hard, and that's the one thing that I can't say that it isn't.
So with your example, you said with the fire hall, you build 30%, so taxpayers still take the 70%, so the taxes are still gonna go up.
I think it all depends on,
So,
on some of these things, it depends on what the building is and what the structure is. So a lot of this is going to be the sewer lines and everything else, which we're going after additional grant funds. So the only thing that you're going to be kind of actually funding is some of the rough structure is where some of that will be coming from, which are funds that are already kind of circling back in. We just haven't been able to get enough money put together to build a facility to do it. This gives us an ability to jumpstart that with the intent that, I mean, we aren't raising the taxes, but now we actually have some place that's 80% or 60% done, because the hard work of getting the road and everything else are things that we can pay for. I don't want to say we're gaming the system, but there's a way to do it so that what we can't do is minimize it as much as possible.
So, yes.
You talked about Bridger Brewery on
Yes.
that one section, but there are two other landowners, right?
Yes, they're actually...
Potentially that are 10 or 11?
There's 10 or 11. I mean, part of what we're hoping to do is we want to have a sewer system and a main line that comes over to Wheat, Montana. It's one of those, it's the lifeblood kind of in this area. Having that ability to have resiliency, if there's an existing septic system that doesn't work, we have the ability to tap them in. So that will be some.
So the larger landowners that are adjacent to that property, the way I'm kind of understanding this is that you're saying Bridger Brewing would be basically helping the county financially.
Mm-hmm.
So what about those two other larger parcels, whether they stay agriculture or whatever they want to be, whether they want to be in this zone or not, are they responsible for part of this infrastructure?
Only if they join in. There's two
But do they have
issues.
a choice to join in?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Because
So
there's,
then what do you do if you don't want to join in?
then you don't.
You have that
Literally,
right.
You have that right. We cannot do anything to you. The key to this is we create a water sewer district which holds the infrastructure. If you live outside and want to, in one of those tracts that's right next door, you don't deal with the commission, you deal with the water sewer district and connect and just do whatever you want or not. What it does is it creates a water sewer district which is a separate entity within the state.
When you say sewage, are they going to build ponds, are they going to build a facility?
I'm glad you brought that up. We are not building the big traditional ponds because they take up a lot of room and they aren't very efficient. You have to build all of them at once. What this is what's called a microbioreactor. We've been working with Lewis and Clark County. We put one in Craig, we put one in Wolf Creek. They're in a building. They're basically a 40-foot shipping container on skids that slides in. It has a little pre-charge tank that pumps into this. Basically, it uses bugs to eat the sewage, and then it has a high-pressure filter to filter everything out, and it discharges drinkable water. Not that we're going to drink it, but then there is a settling pond or a standing pond outside for land application. So they're going to use some of the water for watering trees. And the other key that we're wanting to make sure is we have a dry well and other mechanisms so that the fire department can actually use those waters for them, and it would be open year-round.
Do you have schematics or a plan of what you're planning on doing?
Got some drawings over here. And I can put them on a website, either the county's or ours, and make sure that we get it to you also.
You know how many people they plan on hiring on the brewery?
So, there are different things. The brewery right now for us is there's manufacturing jobs and then there's the rest of the jobs. It's about 50 people, 45, 50 people at first phase that will probably ramp up over time. We do have a couple other businesses that have said they're manufacturing businesses. If this shows up, they're going to be interested in coming out here also.
How large is this proposed water and sewer district? Is it bigger than the 10 or just the 10?
Right now, just the 10.
Yes.
Are we, is this strictly for industrial, or did you go allow commercial such as restaurants and the hotels?
Yes, the commercial will be allowed, but the assistance any additional assistance with respect to this program, the state only allows it to be spent, this money, on secondary value-added industries. But the use in the area can include commercial.
So we can put a main line in front of you, but we cannot connect to your building using these funds.
You can connect to it.
You can. We
If
can't.
I live in the district, and I'm in there,
Yes,
and I want to put in a restaurant on my property,
you
I
can.
can. Is that going to be at my expense?
Yes.
Now, the design is trying to make sure that we have a short run from the main to you. And that's the intent, and why we have designed the mains to be where they're at is for several other businesses that are in here, we want to make it in the future, if you do want to do that, we're trying to minimize those costs.
And we're talking about your share of the sewer and water district would be up to you if you're in a non-industrial use.
But if I stay as an industrial use, which I assume I am at this point in time, I can be added into the district without a cost to me.
Into the water sewer district we're talking about, right?
And with that, we
If
can
you're in the
assist, if we have funds available, we can assist to do things that can make you, connect you and make you actually grow your business. That's the angle that we play.
And you're still, if you hook up, you're responsible for maintenance and everything else, all the sewer and water.
Yep, you become
All the
involved.
lines, the pumps, everything else.
Everything else.
So, government says that your bus tank is not working properly, you gotta spend $5 million on it.
Yep.
You go with it.
That's it.
So it's like a block.
It is. It's very much like a cooperative. That's the reason why we wanted to go to the sewer district that we're looking at right now, or the system, is because it does discharge and it meets drinking water standards. I said that somewhat jokingly. We did it for that reason.
Is the county paying to have that installation put in there?
No. It all comes out of,
Well, it would be county, it would be tax income and
yeah,
finance.
it's this,
Which
it's
is
the
public
funds as the Bridge of Brewing still pays all of their taxes, 100% of their taxes, but the money stays here, and those taxes over that 15 years.
So you're saying those taxes are going to build that sewage facility?
Yes.
So it's not private money, really, it's tax money coming from the county?
Yes.
Okay, they understand.
Yes. It goes up and comes down. The intent on this is, if you build it, your money will stay there to make sure that you can do what you want to do. It allows that to make this happen. The caveat and why the commission has these types of questions, will it happen if we don't do that? I mean, I've talked to at least a dozen different businesses trying to pitch them to this location. When they hear they don't have public water and specifically public sewer, they have walked away from me every time.
Right.
Yes.
So, if we offer Bridge Brewery and Maine coming in right now, incentives for X number of years based on an incremental 5 years contract, how is the system going to pay for itself? Where the cash coming from initially, if they're paying for it all?
User fees. So all of the O&M, all of the electricity, the person that's maintaining it, the composting of the bugs as they die and then have to compost them and actually is a sellable product. All of that is whoever's hooked to the system, they have to pay for those
and
components.
let me just add to that. The tax income and financing is kind of a chicken and egg. So you're asking someone to come in essentially before the infrastructure is in place, and then asking them to pay for the infrastructure.
Sure.
Is what I'm getting also from your question. So what you can do is some communities bond. In other words, they borrow the money ahead of receiving the tax increment revenue. And then they use the proceeds of the bond to build the infrastructure and then pay the bond back with the annual tax increment payments.
So then if they get, if I'm understanding this, so you'll get a loan basically to put it in.
Yes.
Now you're telling us the school and fire district is going to get money from this, then if they're on decreased taxes, then are we really getting any more money for the protection?
They're not recognizing that additional income for 15 years. But they could benefit from the district through direct infusion of tax income and funds into their infrastructure, into the fire and police infrastructure through buildings or equipment.
So we said chicken and the egg. So for 15 years, their tax dollars are going to pay for it, but have you bonded it already so that the money is available to build it?
Not yet. We're waiting for this, kind of the protest period. We have been talking to bond counsel, we've been talking to some banks, we've been talking to some other people who can do the funding. We're kind of waiting to see where this goes on these steps. Right now, Richard Brewing has a backup plan that they will be building their own sewer system that they have.
So, yes, you have a question?
So you have to go, maybe bonding aside, you have to go 15 years, could it terminate for a year?
Can't hear you.
Terminate, and the question was, is it 15 years fixed, or can it last for less time? And the answer is, it can last, the county commission can terminate it at any time. However, once you create a debt, then you, by virtue of that contract, you'd have to pay that off. But while there are about 60 districts like this in the state of Montana, give or take, it changes every year, and the vast majority, I think there's just been a handful that have sunsetted early. The thing that Brian alluded to earlier is that very often, this is an exception, that Bridger Brewing is waiting in the wings. So very often, communities and counties create these districts without really any prospects. And sometimes it's the 5th or 7th or 9th year before they recognize any increment. And they're working all that time together. So it's fairly rare that the districts end early, but absolutely there's nothing prohibiting them from sunsetting.
How often does these fail, where they spend all this money on infrastructure and then nothing happens?
They can't really spend any money on the infrastructure.
No, if the county decides to get a bond and put that in, and then we get Ridge Brewing and that's it.
What the bond council won't sell a bond, won't issue a bond if there's not a revenue stream. And typically what happens is that the borrower or either signs a letter of credit or there's some guarantee of an income stream. It's not a general obligation bond. The county is not on the hook for these bonds. They're revenue bonds. So the bond council won't even issue them if that's even a possibility.
Who decides that they can sunset early?
Pardon?
Who decides that they can sunset early?
The county commissioners.
There's the problem.
So if we wanted to be part of this GoFundMe, okay.
Yes.
So if we wanted to be part of this growth in our area, will we have access to purchasing part of the bond?
Yes, actually, I'm looking for people who want to have investment in bond for these buildings. Right now, one of the things that we have been able to do is we are using a different mechanism called industrial development bonds for the actual construction of the brewery right now. So right now, Doherty as a bond council is looking for investors who would be interested in doing that. We're also looking for businesses that may want to be out here. Again, it comes down to if we can get the money in hand that's actually paying for this basic infrastructure, we can sunset as soon as possible or grow to whatever the commission and the board wants to have happen. But if you are interested, I've got business cards.
Just about one or two more questions.
Where is the business, you say you're looking for businesses to come, what lots are they going to buy out there to build on?
So within this area, the two developers at the same time are going to be subdividing those tracts, anywhere from 1 acre to 5 acre tracts. As the sewer system comes in, they will be dropping in additional ones. They will have to work through the planning department to do that. The biggest key on that is can they get to water and sewer? Those are the hurdles with DEQ. It's making sure that you can actually meet sewage and then health and safety.
So how much is it going to cost to put this infrastructure in initially?
The first phase is about $1.5 million. And they're paying about $100,000 a year in income and in excess.
Is that strictly sewer?
That is sewer and the sewer mains and a roadway and, additional.
Where's that road? Is that their driveway?
So the first phase will probably be the driveway starting from just north of Mickey, and then the second phase will be the one between you.
Do you have commitments from any businesses other than or landowners other than Bridger Brewing and Wheat Montana to actually join this tent so far, other than the Redding property that's up the street? Has anybody else given you an inclination if they are interested in joining? So they will be contiguous on both sides?
I do want to say, I've never heard anybody say that they aren't going to come out here because there's no infrastructure. I'm a realtor, and I've never heard anybody say that.
Are you commercial or residential? Okay. When we have talked, one of those is being Country Classic, which is now Maryville. They had bought 37 acres right over here. And part of what I understand and what I've been told is part of the reason why is they could not figure out how to manage their wastewater on that. And very specifically, because of just that conversation, we are designing a system that could take their type of waste.
One last question. Yes.
All right, so in the event that this is all to go through and they were to put in because infrastructure seems to be somewhat of a problem in the county as it is. But if they were to put all that in and they put in the firehouse or the sheriff house, that pays for that structure, but what pays for the cars or the trucks?
That would be part of, that would not, typically, we try, there might be some cases where equipment is covered, but typically it's not. It's the basic, it's the real property pieces that are.
And that's a base here to sustain that though? So it's not here.
But that's part of it is when this sunsets, we're going to be dropping, I mean, $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 worth of new funds back into the county, which helps to offset that.
So if it sunsets, that would happen.
It has to sunset. The question is that's why we want to sunset it as quickly as
And that's
possible.
at sunset anywhere from 15 to 40 years, is that
Correct. Or sooner if the county decides it doesn't want to pursue it anymore.
I've heard that sunset word a lot, word with my benefits, it never happened without them.
In the state of Montana, the Department of Revenue is very quick to make sure that
Yeah,
you
they won't.
And I'm just curious, because it seems as though that's come up a lot as far as like fire and, emergency services, like it's already an issue on this end of the county based on the amount of people that are here. Right. And the county is struggling to provide what is already needed. And so it seems like, when speaking of the chicken and the egg, it's kind of like cart before the horse. And I just, it's concerning that it would be a potentially failing system if not everything went 100% per plan. And at that point, as seen with, well, I think just roads, for example, it falls, who does that responsibility then fall on?
Part of the reason why we want to be very measured, we don't want to get too far out in front of the seas on this. Because if we put too much infrastructure in, we're opening ourselves up. But we want to be able to provide enough with a manageable area. And I would ask at our later conversation to talk about a lot of the cost, and the reason why we struggle is we can't get that basic infrastructure on the ground, the buildings where we need them to be and things like that. Then the manning, and I mean, there's a lot of issues that go with that, but probably one of the biggest hurdles is the physical structure really does kill us.
Why is Bridger Brewing Company it's so hard to be out here? What is their incentive?
Because they could buy 250 acres here or 2 acres in Four Corners. And it's a production brewery. For them, it was down to the infrastructure costs and do they have an ability to look long term? I mean, they were looking at property in Four Corners at a certain price point. They could look here, and the price point for a lot more was roughly the same money. It gave them some opportunities to do other things. What we like about Bridger Brewing is right up next to the campus. A lot of their employees are just now graduating or have just graduated. They've been asking, how can I start a business, in the area? So we're hopeful that that will spur on other development.
The last question I just have is, this is current funding for current times. Do we have a growth plan beyond this current funding, which will in turn mean more housing, more infrastructure spending? So is there a plan beyond that, say budgeting, this is what we're going to see in our crystal ball in the future, potential growth, and how we're going to pay for that in the future? Or should we start putting money aside now and saying, like a lot of businesses do, they put some money aside, say, put every 4% away every year so that I can continually plan for that future when I need it, at today's dollars.
Right. There are some things right now, the county is going to update the growth policy with the intent of trying to do some interaction with Three Forks also, so that we are kind of talking jointly about what is going on down here. Because we do have to address
We
this.
probably have to stop, but the county attorney has one more statement that I think will be helpful to hear, and then we'll get on with the agenda.
So I just want to clarify something. There's two actions that would actually happen, right? There's the actual adoption of the actual establishment adoption of the district, right? And then there's also zoning done to facilitate that. So, for the, as Brian said, if a landowner wants to be out of the 10 district, they just say, I'm not in it, I'm out. But the zoning requirements are a little different. When someone protests zoning, and if over half of the acreage proposed in the zoning district says no, that's a protest that would stop that zoning for a year. Does that make sense? So a landowner could say, I'm out of the 10 district, but they could be included in the zoning that you put in place. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Just so
although,
we're-
it can have, although what we said is that we will only zone the area that's contiguous.
Right, so you can tailor the zoning to fit the text. There isn't an automatic
That's very, thank you. I think that's important clarification. And then one last thing I'd like to say in response to your question again is that the reason that I do this and it get involved in the long term, it does benefit our schools and our other infrastructure. It's just I've had to learn to take the long view, but it does benefit communities as a whole. Economic development is hard, and bringing businesses is hard, and a key part of that is infrastructure. So I think that the opportunity for Broadwater County to gain in the long term is a really important one. And I'd be happy to, following this meeting, to Brian can field your calls, the commissioners, they can refer your questions to Lynette and me, and we'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
We'll close the TED section, we'll move on to the Price Road Rural Improvement District. Mary,
Again, my name is Mary Henderson. As you may have been here last year, I was here last year when we had this meeting. I've been here for a total of 3 weeks. So I've been here now for a little over a year. And one thing that I heard last year was some issues about the road department and their lack of attention to roads in this area down here. So what I did put together first, I just wanted to put together, I went through the road logs, the guys keep road logs, they keep logs of where they go, what they do on those roads. So I went through the road logs. This pink sheet is just a summary of when they were down here. Between July of last year and June of this year, actually. So, as you can see, and I don't want to belabor this too much, we have spent some time down here. We did do some patching of that asphalt on Price Road. As you remember, there was a pretty big part of that asphalt that was in pretty rough shape. We installed some culverts on this northern end of Price Road. This is also, I did this specifically for Price Road and Glen Branch and Wheatland Road. But typically when we've been down here for any of those roads, we've also been over on Old Town, down on Meridian, and up on East. So. We were on Old Town last year.
I know all the county guys.
I will pull my records and you can have this if you would like. I'm happy to show you. Okay, sure. Anyhow, if I can continue, if you don't mind. We did put some new culverts on the northern end of Price Road where we had that flooding, and I think it was, do you remember the names? Was it Siler? There were 3 landowners. Yes, thank you. So we did do that. We did our mowing. grading the road, they graded it a couple times last year. Did some snow plowing, as you all know, in February and March.
Price Road hasn't been completed road.
What's that?
Price Road is not been completed road.
Okay.
You're saying it was.
They are out mowing right now. This is last year, what I'm talking about. They just started.
Why are you so smug? I don't understand.
I'm not.
Just
No,
your
I'm not.
attitude
I'm
coming
trying-
towards her. She just asked me
I'm
questions.
trying to articulate myself.
Well, then what are you doing?
Please
It's really
forgive
turning
me.
people off.
Please forgive me.
Please let her, you were brief.
What I'm going through this was last year. So this is what we did last year when we were down here. We did plow the snow. In April, we put some gravel on Price and Wheatland because of the moisture that we had on the road from all the snow. And then just a month ago, we went down and gravel watered and graded Price, Rolling Glen Ranch, and Wheatland roads. And I do hope people were satisfied with the second effort that we made down there. I have been talking to the road department about how we need to grade these roads. We don't want to grade roads dry. We need moisture, but if we have too much moisture, we just end up tearing up the road. So we really do need optimum moisture. This is a big county. We have, almost 800 miles of county road. We have 4 operators, we have 4 graders. Right now we have 3 dump trucks. So we're limited, by our personnel and our equipment. And our budget limits us as far as, what can we do? So I just wanted to share that with people. So actually, one more thing. So what are we planning on doing this year, big projects down there? We're going to do some culvert additions and replacements for those of you that go down Rolling Glen Ranch Road. Down on the bottom, there's a pretty bad spot down there. And I noticed one of the ends of the culverts, I think it's the south end of the culvert, and maybe the north end too, was hit by some farm machinery. And we're actually going to replace and put some bigger culverts in there so that we don't have the issues there with the water over the road. And then we've been talking about realigning part of Price Road where we go around those corners. I believe it's Siler, that I don't know if he's here, that owns that property, but there are a couple sharp turns in there. So
We call them the S turns.
yes, okay. The S turns. We have been talking about that. And I actually have a meeting with our engineer tomorrow to talk about how we would go about doing something like that. So another thing that I did this last fall is I started talking to our county engineer about the roads, the issue of Price Road, bringing it up to county road standards. There is some asphalt on it. And I had asked him to look at, okay, what is it going to take cost-wise? What is it going to cost us to do this? To add, put some vertical lifts on this, widen the road, and even asphalt. So this document that you have from WWC Engineering is one. What's that? If you don't have one, I can get one to you. Okay. So just, if you don't have one and you want one, at the end of this, if you just want to, I have this electronically. If you give me your email address, I will send this to you. So, but basically what Sean did for us is he just went through and provided some recommendations. He does a lot of work. He is our county engineer, he's our floodplain manager. And I've been down the road several times with Sean, and we've just kind of been looking at some changes that we need to make there. So what he did is he actually put some cost estimates together for this. And what you're going to see is you're going to see a couple of different things. He looked at the Price Road reconstruction. So that's the cost to bring it up to county standards. And based on things that Sean and I have talked about, what needs to be done, gravel sources, everything else, we're looking at a cost there of about $691,000. He put these together. This memo was dated January of this year, but he started working on this last fall, and he started having these conversations. So these are 2018 costs. So if you notice then, on page 2 of 3 in this document, there's a breakdown about everything that's associated with that reconstruction of the gravel road. So there's some horizontal realignment that needs to be done, and then some vertical realignment as well. We need to bring that road elevation up. Because in some areas, and I've seen it all over the county, but in some areas, you know, some of it's due to agriculture, just because, you know, the way the fields are plowed, our roads in some areas are lower than our fields, and that's not good for our road. Our job is to make sure that we divert and keep the water off the road, and it's hard to do when that road is lower than the fields that are next to it. So Sean did put in there contingency, which is typical, and you'll see that cost is $691,000. Now, I had asked him then to look and see, give me a cost estimate for what it would take to put asphalt on that road. And talking about the asphalt from Rolling Prairie Way to Red Shoulder Lane. So it's about, it's 8134 feet, so a mile and a half or so is what we're looking at. And for that mile and a half, it's $714,000 just for the asphalt.
Who's going to make the decision whether it's going to be asphalted or not?
You will.
You will.
Okay.
And that's what Nicole's going to talk about. So in order to do this, obviously, in order to put the asphalt on, you have to bring that road up to county road standards. We can't asphalt it in the shape that it's in right now. So the total project cost would be about $1.4 million then.
So you mentioned maintaining Rolling Glen Ranch Road. Is that now a county road?
Rolling Glen Ranch Road is, yes, not Rolling Glen Loop.
Okay, so the road that goes through Rolling Glen is now a county road?
No, it's Rice Road,
Right.
Rolling Glen Ranch Road. So it's coming out of that subdivision there, down to Wheatland.
Oh, on Wheatland. Okay.
Yes, and then Wheatland Road. Those are the only three county roads.
I'm not complaining, because it looks like it's taking care of the road, but I don't think it's enough money to pave it, like that much road.
Well, okay, let me tell you.
That's the first thing. The second thing is, who decided to stop at Red Shoulder Lane?
That's what we looked at. What's beyond that right now?
I am. I will be completely honest. Your subdivision is across the street from me, and there's two entrances there, so.
I didn't make that decision.
Okay, I'm just
Sean did.
being honest, that's all.
Sean did, because I will tell you, I was ignorant to kind of where things were out there. I've been driving the roads a lot lately, so I kind of know where things are. Not the greatest still, but I didn't make that decision. That was just a point that Sean chose. So could it be extended beyond that? Sure, it's just going to cost more. So, but one thing that is great about this, and I don't want to steal Nicole's thunder, but you know, we have some work going on at the Costin Bridge, you know, and they're going to be paving that in 2 years, let's see, 2021, I think is when they're going to be paving. So one thing that might work out is that there's a company that's going to have a hot plant here already. And you know where you're going to save money is, number one, probably going to be hungry. They're going to want to do something in the area. And number two, you're going to save on your mold costs. Because if you look at this, your mold costs are, you know, it's the cost of them bringing in all their equipment. It's, for the asphalt, almost $50,000. And, you know, that's something that, and about 40 for just the gravel. So, you know, those are things I think that after Nicole's discussion, and it's something you guys will decide. But there are things that you can do to maybe help minimize some of those costs. And the contingency is in there just in case something happens. You really need to have those in contracts so that you know. But if you don't need that money from your contingency, you don't spend it and you don't have to have it. So, and that's what I have, I think.
May I suggest that I see it as very, very important that the fact
that there are four, specifically four staff in the road department. 760 miles of road, county roads to be, I believe that's something that should be considered. And when you're talking about 3 roads here, they're darn important to us, yes. But they are, what, 10 miles out of 760?
Right.
I think that's just something that should be considered.
Right.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
One road you haven't actually given any interest to is Hilltop Road, and it is in the south end of the county.
Great.
And we basically get ignored. Last year at the end of the meeting, I spoke up and congratulated the road guys for doing an excellent job. Since then, they turn around halfway to my house and go back.
So where do you live?
159 Hill.
So where's that from the highway? How far down is it?
2 miles, maybe 3.
All right. I will talk to them.
Well, no, I mean, I try to make them, everybody else is doing this to them, and I did this to them, and now they don't plow my road, I don't understand. I mean, it's not right.
We did have some issues.
Just saying, it's like we don't exist there.
No, you do.
But you get no information from the county. You know, I don't
Please
know.
don't, honestly, please do not hesitate to call me. I really am. I am a problem solver. I've lived in this county for 15 years now. And for all but the last year and a half, I lived off the county, well, I still live off the county road. And I was complaining about the lack of service on my road. And now that I have the opportunity to do something about it, I want to do that. I want to do that for people because I know what it's like.
Right.
And you know, I don't even have, I live off a private road, off of a county road. And you know what? I told them no favors, and they're not going to do my roads because I asked them to. Because I'm not going to go there with that. But if you have a problem, please call me. And I can at least make sure that we have addressed your issues. And I do have a list of roads on the whiteboard in my office that we still need to do, and no conference on it. So, okay?
Thank you.
Please understand there's a little frustration on our part. Last year, when we had our meeting, we were supposed to have this meeting 2 or 3 months. We're a year late with this meeting. We signed up and gave email addresses, and you were going to contact us. That never happened. In fact, we requested the list, and for months it was lost, and then miraculously it appeared. There's a lot of distrust on our end as it relates to living in the southern part of this county. The tax-based money that we contribute now for a small amount of roads, basically, as we're talking about, we're pretty frustrated in the action that the county has taken towards this southern part, which represents a tremendous amount of growth to this county. And I'm just curious, one of the questions I had was with the developers on Price Road, was all of the money that they paid, did every penny of that go to improve Price Road, or were their funds used, collected by the developer, collected from the developers, that were diverted to other areas?
I do not know because I wasn't here. So I would ask Nicole or I would ask the commissioners because that was before my time with Robert.
Do you, can I answer? Sorry, I know you have a question on your part. But, so again, I'm Nicole Brown, I'm the Community Development Director, also the planner. So I can assure you that every bit of those Price Road tax dollars were diverted to a Price Road fund. And in fact, in the clerk and recorder's office, and if any of you want it, I can scan it and send it off to you. It's a list of every single dollar that was paid into the Price Road fund and how it was spent. So I would be happy to share.
The post office also has issues with delivering a lot of the areas out here also because of the road conditions and things like that. That's something that we need to look at and to take into consideration also, because we do have medication that we have to get to customers and things like that. Me personally, last year, I have a 4-wheel drive Suburban that I got high-centered in snow on Price Road. trying to help the carrier deliver out there. So the situations do get extreme with that out there. And for us as a postal service, we got to keep our employees safe, things like that, but we also need to make sure we can deliver the mail.
Sure. So our first priority is mail routes and then school bus routes for snowplow. So, and understand your mailboxes are in a county road right away. So yeah, we had this discussion this spring when we had all that snow. And I'm very aware of that. So I have talked to Roads about how to kind of make things easier for you guys that do that. You know, I don't know the history. I don't know how my predecessor operated. I'm trying to I worked for the state for a number of years, and then I came to the county. And my job as a public employee is to spend the monies that we have for my departments wisely and to provide a service to members of the community. That's my job. And that's what I have been trying to do. We have had some issues in the Crow Creek Valley, for instance. You know, the snow that we got this February, March was really unusual. It really was. For this county, it was really unusual. I think it was 20 or 30 years before we had seen that. Or since it was 20 or 30 years ago, since we've seen something like that. And, you know, I think that my crew did a pretty good job. You know, they worked 17, 18 hours a day plowing snow. The wind was an issue. We plow, the wind comes up, and it's just much worse. And, you know, I appreciate everyone's understanding. It is tough. I totally understand that. If there was an emergency, we would deal with it. We would deal with it. So
how do we help you get more people and your staff and those ones up there?
Well, it's
obviously an
mills,
issue.
right? It's more mills. That's what it is. It's more mills. What does that mean? It's higher taxes. You know, I have basically I have a pretty fixed budget. It varies little from year to year, you know. With the growth, we do get more money, but it would be great if I had, you know, I would love one more operator, and one more road grader, and one more dump truck. And, you know, one thing that I did do this summer, and I just ask that you guys are patient, but I did get some calls on the great job that the road department did the last time we graded over here. And I'm the kind of person, I was raised, my dad would say, if you want something done right, do it right the first time so you don't have to go back. And that is what I'm trying to get them to do. And so far it's succeeded. And because what my goal is to go out in the spring, let's do our road maintenance, let's spend some time doing the maintenance the right way. That is with your grader, your water truck, your walk and roll. If we need more gravel, put gravel on, because that's what protects that road base. And that's the charge that they have been given from me this year. It's taking them a little while longer to do that because, you know, we have dump trucks now and we have the water truck now that they have to take out to do that. Where before, I don't think it always happened. So my goal is just to improve that so that you are happy with the service that we give you with, you know, what you give us in taxes.
I think the frustration many of us have is there's a greater density of people living here now, so there's more tax dollars. The length of the road doesn't change. It's finite.
Right.
So the more tax dollars that come in from this end of the county for the road should be available for the road for that same finite. So more people, more dollars, more maintenance. And not maintenance that says the road is washboard, please come or we got a hole. It's preventative maintenance. We're not all firemen. We should be building these problems out and not having them on us.
Exactly.
And so for instance, when the county put in the barrel pits on either side of the road, and they dug them so deep. Now in the wintertime, it's a very simple thing. They're trying to get in and get out. I can't tell you how many people I pull out my tractor because they're trying to pass each other, and they just get in a little and then they're done. So that could be simply fixed. And then you can't cut it because it's so steep. How do you cut it with a blade?
Right.
How can I do my part and say, I want to cut this to keep it clean, keep the weeds off it, but I'm not going to put anything in there when the grade is like this and you get stuff to flip over.
I understand. So when they do that, actually the road will flatten out. We did that last fall and north of here. I did have some complaints about that, but I was actually down that road recently. And it has actually flattened out a little bit. So, what's that? It washed. It washed? Yeah. Okay, all right. So it's just, you know what, it's just a matter of having these conversations, really. And those are the kinds of things that I would like to know. I have certain issues like that. So we had Peter.
I'd like to ask you, how many miles roughly, you know, offhand, of county roads had to be a substantial repair or replacement during the last year, for washouts and so forth?
Well, I'll tell you what, right now we're working on River Road, the south end of River Road, and Parrot Lane, because we had some major frost heaves this year. We had frost heaves in areas that haven't seen frost heaves in a long time, a couple decades. And, you know, the frost came out, and then what did we get? We got all the rain. We got all the rain. And we can't go and open those frost heaves because what happens is you cut that top off, you get a muddy mess, and your road is in much worse shape. There was one of the streets in Townsend, I don't remember which one it was, major frost heave in the residential area. One of the residents went out and cut it open, and the city ended up having to close down the street. It was the guy made a huge mess. So it takes us time, you know, that's part of the problem that the coastal folks out of Townsend are having, is because we've had those issues. How many miles? Boy, I don't know. A lot. I know people are frustrated. You know, we had all that snow and we had all this rain. And rain is good to a point when it comes to roads, but you get too much, and if our roads aren't built properly or maintained properly to keep the water off the roads, it just makes it worse. It just makes it worse. And you can tell if you drive around some of the roads further north of here, you can tell where pivots have been watering the roads. And it's pretty interesting. I never noticed it until I took this job, and it's pretty obvious. You can tell where we have water sitting on the roads. And those are the areas that I want my crew to concentrate on, to keep that water off there, because then we can do a better job of just maintaining those roads.
I've got a question. Maybe the county attorney can deal with this one if you don't know this. Is there for the amount of traffic that is on Price Road, is there a quality of road that we should be able to expect from the county? The last meeting we had, Jeff Price spent some dollars to see what kind of road we have. And we have next to nothing. We've got clay with a little bit of gravel over the top of it, no rock base, nothing as it relates to that. Does the county have a responsibility to maintain that road with the amount of people that access it to a certain quality?
No, we don't. We don't. We have a county road standard, and if anyone's going to build a road, okay, I don't know, do you use the county road standard when you have your roads in subdivisions? So if we have roads in subdivisions, but understand, a lot of these roads in this county, those were just 2 tracks.
Well, I know the history of what is there, yes. But as more and more people come here, it still seems like, yeah, you put in a few culverts last year. We appreciate that. But the tax base, I have to think, that's paying to maintain that road, we just keep putting a Band-Aid over that thing. And then when you start throwing out these figures, like the county has no responsibility towards these figures, all of us here, you got to come up with that money, or else it's not going to happen. I don't mind paying a little bit of what is my fair share, but I sure pay a lot in property taxes. And I think be on the hook equally with us.
Well, I have a fixed budget. So what I did today is I actually went through the tax records. And I looked at all the taxes in J24 district. And what do they pay? What percentage of the overall road budget that comes from taxes do you guys pay? You pay actually less than 15%. And the area, the land area covered down here is less than 4% of the total county. So we're talking, what did we say earlier, 10, maybe 15 miles of road, when I have 760 miles of road total in the county. I understand.
15% of your budget, you're getting 4% taken care of.
It's semantics.
No, it's not
It's
good.
semantics. It's percentages.
No, I'm just trying to relay.
We're the county commissioners, I think you guys can speak about how the money.
But I'm gonna answer the issue. So, part of the issue is, and this is not a surprise to anybody, right? Part of the issue is that there's parts of this county that are just growing really fast. This is probably the fastest growing, followed shortly by the north end, the spillover from Lewis and Clark County. And then out by the silos, that area, geez, you look at what you could do there 5 years ago, and what you could do now. You can't shoot right about it right now. So, as all of this growth has happened in these areas, and they're on the ends, we've struggled with how to address it, how to respond, how to keep up. And when you do residential areas that get put in, residential areas generally are not your biggest return on tax dollars in terms of paying for infrastructure, right? It's even worse in this area because Prelude was a great big development that was planned right before the crash in 2008, right? And so that there was a lot of spade work that had been done planning-wise for infrastructure in this part of the county that a lot of that got basically flushed down the toilet in 2008 when there was a crash and there was bankruptcies and there was a lot of stuff that was just put on the back burner for a long time. And now everything's heating up again. So that's one of the reasons why we're having this meeting here, both with this 10 district and the idea that we're going to support industrial and commercial development. That's where you get a lot more tax revenue, property tax revenue, rather than residential. But, the sheriff's here, and he can tell you the same thing that I would tell you. I'm the only lawyer in my office. I'm a one-guy county attorney office, and I don't have a one-guy county attorney workload. Our crime is crazy. A whole lot of it is drive-through stuff. Crazy people between Bozeman and Helena, but we've got a fair amount of home road. We can't play one with them. We're trying very hard to do more law enforcement presence down here. Where is the sheriff and undersheriff? All that gives me that. But they've hired a deputy who lives here. He's spending a lot more time here. Okay? Daryl was mentioning, I think they're going to talk about a public safety facility for law enforcement, fire, all that stuff. That is part of our effort to go, you know what? The north end and the south end are both saying we need more services. I certainly agree with that. I know all of us agree with it. But we're trying to catch up. And my office and what I'm trying to do is I'm simply trying to catch up. We are actually getting more miles of road, and that is part of the other issue. We're getting more miles of road. We're also getting a lot more travel on those roads, which means they got to have more maintenance. I think part of the issue with Price Road is that in 1980, Price Road didn't need a whole lot of maintenance like it did. The traffic, what's the traffic now compared to 1980?
We knew that, and we said that then, before the developments came.
Absolutely.
And land was never used.
And we're not arguing about that. We want it fixed. But we say, you're right, top line growth. We're getting top line growth in tax dollars.
So I don't think there's anybody here, what you're saying, concerns about A84. We're not going to have anybody from the county officials that's saying you're wrong. It's simply we're trying to catch up. And that's part of why we're here.
That is a lie. I heard we're doing this is the best you're going to get. That's what I heard.
Well, that's not what I'm telling you. I think what we're telling you. And aren't we talking about an RID for Price Road? I mean, that's part of the issue.
What I do want to do is I want to hear from you. If there are maintenance issues that we're not addressing, please call me.
You can't maintain that. It's not, everything that you throw on top of that is
we have, where's our equipment located? It's located in Townsend. I don't want to steal your thunder, but one thing that the commissioners and I have been talking about is getting a public works building down here. And I actually have an operator in mind. I want a grader down here. I want a dump truck down here. So that we have someone down here that can respond to road issues. Not only road maintenance, if I have someone that's doing a good operator I want to put down here. And I know it would be done right. You know, not only for that, but with snow plowing. You know how long it takes to take a road grader from here, or from Townsend here, it takes a long time. And you know, I don't really necessarily like them roaded on the highway because of the wear and tear on the equipment itself. You know, so it would be awesome if we had a spot down here that, you know, I could keep the equipment at. We could keep an operator down here. One thing that we did last winter, this winter, for a short amount of time, is we did have a grader park down here. And I did have an operator down here that was, you know, helping to keep these roads open.
You know, last year, just on this minute, last year, one of the easy things we brought up, and somebody said, oh, that's easy to fix, was a stop sign on Price Road where it rolls off into Rolling Glen. There used to be one. Somebody took it down, but the comment was from the county, oh, that's an easy fix. Guess what? It's still not there.
I understand that, but that's actually a subdivision issue because the county doesn't own the road in that subdivision. So the subdivision can put a sign up there. If you'd like to buy a sign from me, I can get one pretty reasonably. I have some in the shop. But that is the subdivision. It's just like when I lived in the subdivision up on the east side of the lake. And we had signs in there, and those signs were the responsibility of the subdivision. We had a homeowners association. That's what some of those monies were used for, was for signage and road maintenance.
Does the county consider how much traffic a road has aside priority for grading?
Yes and no. Yes and no. You know, we have to look, what is our main industry in Delaware County? It's agriculture.
Rolling
So,
Glen was never, people were never supposed to use Price Road.
okay, and I don't know the history of that, but I know there's a lot going on down here. Well, I realize that. I have been, you know what, when I was here last night, and I will say, in all fairness to myself, I'm doing the job of at least 2 people right now, and I've been doing that since I started. I came in here, and I hit the ground running because I was straight from a fire car. Have I forgotten a few things? You bet I have. You bet I have. But you know what? I will take into consideration your comments because that's what I'm supposed to do as a county employee. You know, it's not only me making these decisions. I keep the commissioners apprised of what's going on in all my departments. You know, I am trying to make sure that my road department does what I ask them to do. The guys are great. They've been great. They've been doing things the way that I've asked them to do. I want things done right so we don't have to go back time and time again because that costs money. And it's a waste as far as I'm concerned. So this guy was next. He's been waiting.
Thank you. This is probably more ahead of the commissioner than with you, but we all know the county have roads back. Their roads have to get up to date. Why does the county keep approving subdivisions and development without either having developers pay for those 2 tracks, which most of them were in the road on the county, to be fixed, or without the tax base or the funds to fix them? If you want to talk about putting the cart before the horse, I mean, why would you do this? You just keep creating problems. And I know you folks weren't part of the development and approval on this end. You inherited it. But think about it before you do it. I mean, Eagle Ridge and some of those were done long after Rolling Glen. Rolling Glen was supposed to have a tragedy on the Price Road. They were not, and that was how they got approval. So there's a bunch of traffic right there that could eliminate some of the maintenance problems on Price Road.
Sure.
But apparently, that approval in all didn't mean anything. You know, apparently the specifics in that approval didn't mean anything.
Can I answer that?
Yes,
Yeah,
please
okay.
do.
So, I guess as far as all new developments, they are absolutely required to meet our county subdivision road standards. The roads are designed by an engineer. They have to be signed and stamped by an engineer that they've been completed to those standards.
The subdivision road?
Correct.
What about the county road?
Not county.
Okay, you have specifications for the county roads, correct? They are supposed
We do
to
have
be
county road standards, yes. If that's your
some
question.
road standards.
Yes.
So it applies to some and not
That's for
others.
new county roads, though. That's what that standard is, it's for new county roads.
Good does that do us? That's what we're talking about.
I understand.
You know, we did the thing, I got your test. We did this, what, 16 years ago? You sat there and we looked at the access, we need to fix the road.
So you,
How long will
so
we push it
I'm gonna
out?
answer your question.
Yeah.
How am I, with my budget, gonna do all this work on
That's
Price
not our,
Road?
that's not our.
And nowhere else? No, but I
I didn't ask to have your job.
No, please stop. That's a question I have to ask myself.
And that was my point.
We're saying we're willing to pay
Don't
for something.
create one of these problems.
But
we
when
already
you give us a map like this, and then he sits here and goes, hey, we're falling off the side of the road. Well, somebody came up with a standard that made those roads so damn steep. If you don't know where they're at, and there's no
No,
markers.
we need to have the ditches in
You'll-
there so
you'll-
that we can divert the water.
Yes, I understand that. I know how to run water, I know how to do grade, I built construction, I understand that. What I do know is whoever did that is gonna kill somebody.
Well,
Because your
I don't know
ditches
that,
are
because
supposed, you're sitting here telling me it's gonna settle. How long ago been in there? 15 years? Have they settled? No. Because somebody thinks they're doing something to get their water.
So if there's an accident to the
And then you
county,
stop it right here before you get there. Where's all the snow? How many people did we pull out there, Jerry? From this spot to the,
We all pulled out.
we were digging, we had, I had a big loader, I had it out there. I pulled the school bus out. Gary plowed all night, get snow. And TJ has worked his ass off, I know that. And I thanked him about 100 times, I think he's still here. Hope he is.
No, he was
I think
One
the
day
hardest thing.
But what we're saying is we understand that you're having a budget. But we've done the effort, we've said we'll do something. We did it a year ago, didn't we? We sat there and you said that you were going to have something done for us.
And
The
this,
1st of June, well, we're back to in July or May, we pushed it to June. Now we've sat around, we've been patient, we waited for
and
people.
this is a direct result of that meeting.
Well,
This is what I asked.
but it's
you.
taken a year. How long are we going to wait till we get a road?
That's what I want Nicole to talk about, because Broadwater County cannot, I can't afford this.
I understand that, but then we call you. When's the last time you returned one of my calls? I know. I've called you so many times, I don't know about any people. Anybody else get a call back?
no,
Did you? I don't know, I'm sorry.
It's been a long time since you called me.
I've been patient waiting.
Actually,
That's true, he had to call.
that's the last.
Before that, I walked up there and gave you, I actually had to come find you in the office.
And that's fine. If we can just keep it on.
I think what's
I
wrong
understand.
I would like to move this on to Nicole's presentation of the RIP.
But one last thing, I think it's hard to digest.
Cole,
That
you
she
have-
says now we're upholding the county standards and now we're stamping it. Why did we do that then? Why did we wait now? Did we just, I understand we all learn from mistakes, but we knew this was coming then. And we tried to avoid it. But now we're told, now nobody can do anything unless they get an engineered stamp and everything. That's telling me that maybe then it wasn't done. And that was a mistake. That's all I'm saying. That was a mistake.
Can I just say, and I do want to publicly apologize to you. I'm sorry, I was really nervous at the beginning. I was really nervous, if you didn't see my hand shaking. I don't normally get like that, and it bugs me when I get like that. So I really do apologize, please forgive me, because that's not my nature. So, thank you.
So to piggyback on this memo, this cost memo for improving the road, as Mary said, the money is not in the budget. So I have an option for you. You may not love it. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just going to share information with you. So we have what's called a rural improvement district, or I'm sorry, the possibility of creating a rural improvement district. I've spoken with some of you about this in the past, you've expressed interest. A road improvement district is basically, it's created by the people. So you have a certain level of service now, you're here, you want to be here. How do you pay for that? There's an option. You can pay for this through a rural improvement district. This is added to your taxes. There is a timeline for it, so you're not paying it forever. So I took the numbers on this engineering estimate. These are my rough numbers. I'm also the GIS person for the county, so I have access to some pretty cool data. There are 220 lot owners. Geographic Information Services. Sorry, that's a government acronym thing. So anyway, there are 220 lot owners beyond the village of Elk Ridge. So that Rolling Prairie Way. Beyond that on Price Road. 220 lot owners, not homes, lots, that could pay into this Price Road RID. So the cost of reconstruction with only the gravel surface on your paperwork here is $691,785. So this amounts to $3,441.48 per lot owner. If you stretch that over the course of 7 years, that cost is $449 per year per lot owner. Now you can stretch that out even further. You can go 10 years, 20 years, 25 years. I also ran the numbers for the cost of paving. I'm sorry, I don't know who asked the question, but one of the people here asked who decides if they want paving. That was absolutely you. If you decide that you want paving, the cost for that is $1,405,941. I don't get to see that many decimal points. This is a total cost of $6,390.64 per lot owner. So over the course of 7 years, that's $912 per year. Over the course of 7 years. Again, that can be stretched out. So who creates the RID? You do. You people, you come together and you decide this is what we want our road to look like. This is what we're willing to pay. You could even say, you know what, I don't want to pay more than $100 a year. That's fine, we'll figure it out. You can do that. So you determine the level of service you want. You don't have to go with this report. This was just a preliminary report, just a jumping off point to give you an idea of what that dollar amount would look like. So you folks would pass a petition to determine what you want this road to look like. If you want to create an RID, I would work with you to administer that RID to make sure that everyone in that RID is paying their fair share. You only need 60% of the lot owners to approve this RID for 100% to participate. Now I know that doesn't seem fair to the 40% that say we don't want it, but guess what? That 40% is still using the road. So and this is all from state law. This is not anything new. This is not specific to Broadwater County. There's also a process, if 100% of the people decide that they want an RID, if everybody that's living out there says, yes, we want this RID, we want this rural improvement district, we want the road to look like this, it takes about a month to get through. I realize getting 100% participation on 220 lot owners might be difficult. That's the 60%.
There are over 800 houses out there.
Just a minute, this gal had her hand raised. I'm gonna be like.
If that's for Price Road, and it's for the Price Road property owners, or lot owners who are going to have to pay for that, and it doesn't affect Woodland, is there any way that we can block that road so they go out the other way instead of using Price Road?
No. So, and also, to speak to this gentleman, you made a statement, and you absolutely were correct. Through the Rolling Glen Ranch approval, the Rolling Glen Ranch developers did say, they offered this on their own, that they would not use Price Road, they would put a barricade up there, they wouldn't use Price Road, because they didn't want to pay into the Price Road fund. They wanted to only pay into, at that time it was Dunbar, and then, those of you that have been there a while remember, Dunbar was kind of configured differently. Anyway, now it's Rolling Glen Ranch Road, the north-south road, Wheatland Road. They determined that they only wanted to pay into those road funds. They said, we're going to block the road. Great, we approved the subdivision based on that. Guess what? Their attorney came back and said, you can't block a citizen from using a county road. Yeah, you're probably right. You can't. So no, you can't block the road. You cannot bar any person from using it.
I have a question. Why didn't the county know that?
Yeah.
Why did the county not know that you could not deny them that access?
Right. No, I mean, I don't have an answer for you, Darla. I wish I did. I wish I could say, you know what? I wish that we would have been smarter back then. I wish we would have taken that into consideration. There are 126
Condition
lots.
doesn't change it. You have a mile of road that somebody paid for.
Why didn't the county rescind that approval then? When in that.
Exactly.
Right.
Because it was approved with them having an emergency exit on the Price Road only.
Yeah. No, I did right now.
So can we get them to start paying for part of that since they're using it?
Through this RID. They are paying their county road taxes, but to pay additional fees, they can join this rural improvement district and pay into this additional fund.
Yeah, but they'll have to.
Don't have to. No. If you create the RID, absolutely. If you get 60% of you lot owners to say, yes, we want it, they have to. Even if they don't want it.
Bridge is not going to say yes to that when they've already got their paved road into their.
But they're not part of their road.
It starts right at the.
Yeah, it starts past it. And that's why I took the village at Elbridge out, because I thought, you know what, that's going to skew your numbers so poorly. Of course you would get a no. Yes, sir.
Are the numbers a little misleading because you could not do the paving part unless you also do the gravel improvement?
Correct. How do you mean deceiving? I'm sorry. My mind.
Because
have to do one.
you have to do, you have to do one, you have to do the other.
Absolutely. And so that's why this page 2, this is gravel, the 691. And then the next page is the paving.
But you can't do the paving unless you do.
Correct. And our engineer simply did this just to show the additional, so that he could put it into a spreadsheet form for us to understand what is the cost of paving. But you're absolutely right. You cannot do paving. You don't get to choose 3 options. There are 2 options, gravel or paving. But paving on top of gravel.
So the paving price does not include the improvements?
It does, no.
It does.
It does, it does on the short list, on this. Yes, sir.
So if Elm Ridge is not on there, they're still on Price Road. When their road goes to L, then the rest of us have to pay to fix that.
If you want to. I'm just kidding. No. So what?
Yeah, well, I don't.
I really don't want to, but I don't want you to have to because it's not fair, right? So I think that what we had talked about internally was the potential. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but the potential for a rural maintenance district, an RMD. So not improvement, but a maintenance district that would include everyone.
We already pay taxes to maintain our roads.
Yeah.
But this is for an extra level of service to come to this standard.
So, question, one of the points on this petition was that access is illegal, basically. It's so dangerous. It's not working. Why don't you force Rolling Glen to fix it? They could take an excavator and move, a few 100,000 yards of dirt, put it somewhere so that they can come in on a level basis. Something. There's got to be some county standard that's going to make that corner safe. Somebody will die there. I promise you. Somebody will die there. You can put up the records because I'm about to do someone. What?
Then it'll cost you a lot more money.
Yeah, it's
The
going.
whole county will be back.
So that particular corner, I don't know how you can fix it, but I would fix that corner. Because that's going to kill somebody. And that's a big thing. So the next thing is you said something about, I missed that, what you were going to ask me.
That and if they're excluding from your figures Rolling Glen participating in it for the road improvement on Price Road.
No, they are included.
Just don't fix
Yeah,
Just the village of
the RID.
And what adjustment does the county make for all those that don't live there that access that road to get back into the Elkhorns from that way?
Sure. Rural improvement districts are only assessed to landowners.
You get gas tax or you get any kind of money?
We do get that, the county.
So there is other money.
Yes. I don't know Mary's budget.
I don't
believe
either.
it.
I mean, that's what we get.
We get gas tax, but it's all rolled into the county road work that we do. Because we can't function just on taxes. So we do get fuel tax now for that, so, and we need it.
There is for this.
What's that? We have fuel tax I have a fuel tax map in my office, and basically it's all the county roads. It's county roads, it's public roads, okay? So we get a fuel tax for that.
How is that based? Is it based on miles of road or is it based on?
Yes, it's based on miles. Yeah, it is. I don't know what the breakdown is on that.
So how's it figured in also to these
He had his arm up,
come in
sorry.
and buy lots?
So if I'm going to
put in a subdivision, don't you want me to be bonded for all the things that I say I'm gonna do, that I'm not gonna do in the end? Then that would be money to cover a lot of these expenses.
Only if you want approval and if you want to sell lots. You cannot create a single deed to sell a lot until all of the conditions of approval are met. One of them being the road construction. If it's on a county road, you pay into that county road fund.
Right, but a bond to cover the developer's mistakes and going back on his word, because as we know, you can't trust anybody these days, which is really sad. But, you know, that would be a way to have a kitty to cover some of these expenses.
As far as I know, that's not allowed by the Montana Subdivision and Planning Act, which is a state law, so we cannot require the developers to do more than what the state requires of them. But it does make sense, I agree.
So how they break down the field, I don't know how.
I want to share one thing with you guys this year. Everybody, Julie Dooling is here. I don't know if you know Julie, she's our representative. Anyway, are you guys familiar with Clarkson Road over here? How many of you have driven that road before it was paved? Pretty dang tough road to drive, wasn't it? Those folks had a similar problem that you guys did.
It's 30 miles long?
Yeah. Had fenders falling off there, right? We're not quite at that point yet, but anyway. So they went to Gallatin County, and their solution was an RID. They had quite a bit. I think they had it's almost 14-mile road. It was $4 million to do that road. Now, they stretched that out over a 20-year period. So for those folks, it's $379 a year is what they pay for 14-mile road. We're only talking about a little over a mile road, right? So just to make this more palatable, something for you guys to think about, if you did this bond for a 20-year, you'd be paying a lot less than what Nicole said. $900. So I want you to think about that, if that's an option that would be acceptable to you guys.
Gerald, can I say something?
Yes.
So Nicole and I were talking about this the other day. The reason that we said 7 years is because when you install an asphalt road, okay, and then you chip seal it within that first year, typically it's 7 years later, you need to go back and do a new chip seal. So that was somewhat arbitrary for a chip seal. That's why she mentioned the rural maintenance district, because it's not the improvement any longer. It's not the construction part of it. Now you're just maintaining that asphalt road.
Part of the problem, though, with if you pave Price Road, people are exceeding the speed limit going down that road anyway. They're going to exceed it even more. And a lot of that is from Wheeler Meadows. You know, so I'm not sure that paving it really is the answer, which I know a lot of people don't want to hear.
And then that's just an option. I mean, this is up to you guys. You guys are driving the bus here. So if it's just gravel road you want, that's the direction we go. If you want to have a paved road, that's fine.
How much would the county save if they had it paved and didn't have to maintain it every year?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if that would be key.
Well, I know for a fact that driving the fire trucks, it's a lot nicer driving on a paved road. But my question on that is, all the people that live up Clarkson, knowing how much of them is, actually after it was paved, 90% of them slowed down because they didn't have to drive fast on the top of the boats.
Yeah.
And that was a fact.
I actually had an opportunity to talk to a bunch of those folks this weekend that live over Clarkson. They said it was the best thing they ever did. They're very happy that they did it. So. Anyway, I'll turn it back to Nicole and Mary.
Oh, Daryl?
Yeah.
When you say we, who is it? Does somebody have to like take the lead to get this petition going?
Yeah, this is actually driven by you guys. So somebody in your community is going to have to take the lead. You, Gary, I don't know who is going to be Peter, and run with this. And you bring this to us. You petition the commissioners, and then we'll move forward with the process.
So the next thing is what I don't know where you're going to stop that improvement. I hope you go at least up to where Legacy comes in.
Right.
If we're not on that, or we have to pay for it anyway, or
you guys live in Jeff County, right?
I do, but I got property on the side, so I'm still paying taxes.
Right.
But Gary doesn't.
Right.
And Vince doesn't.
Right.
So there's about 10, 15 homes sitting right there on the.
I would assume, this is just me speaking, if we're the county, we would probably want to take it up the road further, maybe even to the county line, which isn't that further up. But with that in mind, that just means we have to pay more, right? So let's find that balance, where that's going to be.
I would think it would be probably perfect for the county, since these issues have snowballed from the beginning, and they have the tax rolls that they know who owns the property, so they can send out a potential vote, yes or no, for this, as opposed to us doing it, because it's going to be a lot harder for us. They already have the rolls. They already know who owns that lot, where their address is. They can send it out, and they can collect it.
Or they can provide us with it.
Darrell, how does that work for a lot? What is define a lot? Say I'm a farmer and I own 10,000 acres. Is that one lot?
I think that's one lot.
It's one lot as long as you've not broken it up into separate parcels. If you have one tax ID number.
So basically, if we don't go ahead with the RID, our roads will basically stay the way they are.
We're going to try to maintain them the best we can as we do.
But you're not going to widen them to where they should be for county width. Is that correct?
Well, not even the culverts they put in there, we even have to do.
I mean, we may get an opportunity to do that. I can't say that we will. We just have to work within the budget that we have. And unfortunately, that's how it is when you're living in a little bit smaller county.
Darrell, did I hear right? It's also, we're going to be assessed every time there's repairs on the pavement to chip seal it. That's our dime again.
Well, so here's kind of what can happen with, if you guys choose to do this RID, once this bond is paid off, or however many number of years you guys decide to stretch this out, once that is paid off, it can become a maintenance RID. So that money always stays. That's the nice thing about an RID. The money stays here for you guys. It doesn't go anyplace else in the county. It stays here for you. So that money can continue on if that's something you decide to do for future maintenance, for the chip sealing, pothole patching, and all that kind of stuff. The regular county maintenance will continue. The snow plowing, all that kind of stuff is going to continue because that's the service that we offer. But
Chip
for
sealing's
that
included.
continued maintenance, that's how that works.
Chip sealing's already included, so it's not an additional.
For the first time, or?
First time, not for second year.
First rest.
Right.
Yeah.
We bring this road up to county spec, right? Or is the county going to maintain it if we do not create a maintenance district?
No, then we have to come up with the funds for the maintenance.
No, I'm saying, we say hell with your maintenance district. Are you guys going to be obligated to maintain it to the county standard that we brought up?
I mean, if you decide to just do the gravel portion, Connor, is that what you're talking
No,
about?
it's different.
We paid it. We still say we go full tilt, we paid it.
No.
And then
I'm not
when
making
the bond expires,
What are you saying?
when the bond expires, we
Yeah.
say, heck, we're doing a maintenance district.
Yeah.
Are you guys going to be on the hook to maintain it as a whole and spread this cost out over the entire county like this probably should have originally been done
I
anyway?
think at that point, we would maintain the level of service that we can provide.
And what would we do to maintain an asphalt road? If it was asphalt, okay?
You said you made a big point about having to get asphalt.
Right. If it was an asphalt, so there are some maintenance RIDs in the county. Actually, we do have some of those. Those people that have the maintenance RIDs, we don't do the maintenance. We don't do the maintenance on any of the maintenance RIDs that we have in this county. There's a third-party contractor that comes in. The only thing that we do at the county is that money goes into an RID fund, specifically set up for the area where the RID is. And that contractor will submit a bill to us, and then we'll pay them out of that account. Other than that, we have nothing to do with that.
Can we take some of our 15% of taxes and put it in an RID, and you guys just we'll just pay a contract?
No, because we're not the ones, all the money that goes into road tax, that comes from road taxes, goes to the road department for the whole entire county. Because you're not in, that's the whole purpose of a district. So when you're in a district, whether or not it's a solid waste district, a rural improvement district, road improvement district, even the TED, okay? Anytime there's a district, the money that is raised from that district, whether it's for construction or maintenance, can only be used in that district for a specific purpose.
still, we do the rural improvement district, and then we have our rural maintenance funds, and you take our tax dollars. Will you put them in our rural maintenance fund, or do they go off to East Helena to maintain their roads, because our road, we're paying for it on our own? But we're still paying into this general,
Right,
help everybody in the county road fest, instead of,
So the
into
RID,
us.
so the RID, if you want to answer this, I mean, the RID and the maintenance RID, those people that have those, they still pay a county road tax.
That's so wrong.
But the county doesn't have to fix
Yeah.
the road or maintain the road at all, that's real.
We would plow it. We would plow it in the wintertime. There are things that we would do. We would plow it.
You don't have to grade it anymore, or bring in any dirt.
I understand that, and we do have other asphalt roads in. I'm trying to think of where the RID is.
Okay, well, we've got, say we do the RID without the pavement, okay? Part of the problem is the road already is washed out. What is going to keep you guys maintaining it if it is gravel?
So we would maintain that road.
You keep it the
okay?
same width?
We would no. That is your decision. Okay, that's what's in your hands that I think we all want you to understand. So you would actually hire the engineer to go out and do the design on the road. Okay, so they would determine where culverts are needed, where they need to increase the elevation. Sean did this for me because I asked him to, because I wanted to have some numbers to throw out there for you guys, so you knew what it is that you'd be getting into. So does the road need to be widened? You bet it does.
Of course.
It does.
But it would seem like the county should have to do that since it is a county road.
It's a-
And,
but-
wait a minute, and what's happening is you're creating a situation where there's more accidents that are happening out there, where people are having to pull people out in the winter. Now, that's county consideration, and the county should have to take care of that. Not us with doing an RID and an MDA and whatever else you want to call it. Because, you know, it's like the county is supposed to protect us also. And if you're not keeping the roads to the width that they're supposed to be safe, then what are you doing? Nothing.
No, I don't know, and you know what, I've only been in this position, like I said, for a little over a year. I don't know what the width of that road was to begin with. I have no idea.
You know what
All
the
I know
standards
is that we have a 60-foot right-of-way in most areas in the county. So from the center of the road to the edge, it should be 30 feet on either side from the center of the road. That's what we're responsible for. If you guys did the RID to bring it up to the county road standards, then we would maintain that. We would maintain it. If we needed to put more gravel on it, when we put more gravel on it.
But if it gets washed out, you're not widening it.
What's that?
If it gets washed out, you're not widening it again.
It all depends on where it is. Because we have done that in other parts of the county. We've widened roads in other parts of the county when we've had issues like that. Do we do that as a general course of our duties when we go out and maintain? No, we don't. We don't do that.
So is there the option, if we have a rural improvement district, to put our tax dollars into our roads, because we pay 15%? Can we leave them at the southern end of the county where they belong? I mean, if we're paying 15% of the taxes, we have 1% of the roads, and we use 4% of the funds, where's the other?
So you pay 15% of the taxes that go into the road fund, but I have more money that comes in because I have to have it.
Right.
So it's not just taxes that is part of my budget.
But it seems to me, and I've lived on Price Road for 16 years, that we pay $900, say $900 into roads, and you
A
guys
year?
come out twice.
Okay. You
Once
must
in
own a
the
lot of
spring.
property if you pay that much because.
And once in the fall, and then other than that, road maintenance consists of a yellow cone in the middle of a hole.
And I'll tell you what, that is not unusual for any road in this county because we have 760 miles of road.
I've driven on the roads around town, and I would love to have some of those.
Well,
as
I
my road.
can show you some there that aren't so great.
Do they get
So,
as many people as we
honestly.
do driving on?
Yeah, actually we do. We do. You know, we have Indian Creek Road, and if you guys know, Graymont is up there, it's the lime plant, is up there. What Graymont does actually is, and this could be something that you guys could think of also. Instead of asphalt, what Graymont does is they provide the mag chloride for that road. They provide it twice a year. What we do is we go out and prep the road, so we go out and grade it, we water it, they buy the mag chloride, and we apply it. And Indian Creek Road is probably the best gravel road in the county because they have trucks, overweight, extremely overweight trucks, going from the plant up there down to the rail spur, where they will offload that line into rail cars and ship it out of the state. So, you know, that's something you could also consider. Is let's say you do the gravel, let's say you do the RID for the reconstruction. Just for the gravel, okay? And let's say you set up a maintenance RID to pay for the mag chloride. That's going to be much less than asphalt. And you know what? You get a pretty dang good surface with mag. One thing that mag is good for also is keeping the snow off the road. And I don't know, and, you know, it's just a...
Gary, did you have a question?
Two questions. First question was, where did the money come from to pay for the repair on the pavement on Price Road last year? Second question is, we're all assessed a certain amount of money based on our lots, but we already know there's a potential for tremendous growth in our area, a lot of land for sale. How do the new buyers that come in contribute their fair share and reduce our tax obligation or our maintenance obligation?
So I'm going to answer the second part of your question. So the 220 lot owners, that includes vacant lots. So the new purchasers, they are now picking up that bill. However, if a developer owns that lot, Joe Developer still owns 20 lots, he's paying 20 portions of this out of the 220. So it's not as if it's going to lighten your burden, because it's not based on homes. And I purposely ran the numbers on lots, and the RIDs that we've done in the past, we've done them solely on lots, because it's not fair that just because you have a home there, you have to pay for it, when Mr. Developer has 20, 30, 40 lots, he should also be paying. It also makes his lots more saleable, so he should want to.
And that's all the lots, 220 lots of everybody that accesses Price Road to get to a living residence, or a lot for a living residence.
Beyond the northwesternmost point where Rolling Prairie Way touches the Village at Oak Ridge. And again, I did not include the Village at Oak Ridge in this cost because I didn't want to dispute the numbers, because they could be more than the 60%. They would be part of the rural maintenance district. Does that make sense?
Just think about how much money it is that we spend in taxes. 15% of the budget, that's a lot of stinking money. You could get a road grader down 2 or 3 more times a year, and most people in here wouldn't even bitch it.
It's actually not very much money when you look at the dollar.
It doesn't cost hardly that much to run a road grader.
No, I'm just saying,
Compared to how
it's
much
not,
money we bring in.
when you look at everything, when you look at the big picture, it's not that much. Your road taxes that you pay is about the maximum. Some of them are less. I did actually pull up a bunch of tax reports today because I wanted to see what are people paying. The maximum I saw was 4.67%. So if your valuation is, if your total tax bill is $1,000, $46 goes to the county road department. So it costs more than $46 to bring a grader down here. That's why we've been talking about a public works building down here and having an operator and equipment dedicated to the southern part of the county. Because that's really the only way we're going to be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish down here.
And here's the downside of all of this. We want this place to be a good, that's why we all move here, a great place to live. As a real estate agent, right here I have my real estate license, you got to disclose everything. You will ruin real estate out here if we tell people, and we have to disclose, because Montana is a disclosure state. The county does not take care of any of the roads, you're on your own. People won't move. You don't move other places?
I don't know that I would necessarily agree with that, because we do have a lot of subdivisions in Lewis and Clark County. They aren't county roads. The county does not maintain subdivision roads. We don't do that. This winter, as an example, I had several calls from people about plowing them out. And they told me what road they lived on, and I said, it's not a county road. We cannot do that. We can't do that.
Well, Price Road is a county.
Price Road is.
That's
But
what
I'm but I'm just,
I'm not, no,
I
other roads-
realize that.
I understand. You move to Montana and live in the country, buyer beware. I mean, I used to hand a pamphlet. You're living in the country, son. Welcome to Montana. Nobody's gonna come get you if you're out in the middle of nowhere, and that's where you wanna be. But if you're off a county road, you expect county standards. That's all we're asking for. We're not asking for anything more.
And $46 times 220 lots is over $10,000, so it's not just $46.
No, but I'm just saying, as an example, if your tax bill was $1,000, $46 of that would go to roads. That's all I was saying. So, you know, you can take it for what it is, but that's just the point I was trying to make.
So those lots are being built on the county
We're
line.
close this and move on to our next deal here. We're already about 40 minutes.
Can they answer the question that I asked as related to who paid for
Like road department,
pavement repair?
the road department, we did.
But if we put in pavement, we've got to pay for our repair.
No. That's only if you have a maintenance RID. The great thing about a maintenance RID is the money that goes into it pays for your maintenance. And it's not going to be as much as your construction RID. Because it's not going to cost as much to maintain it depending upon what you're out there.
We're going to move on to the emergency services building. Mike.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Conkey. I live up on Muddy Lake, south of Omaha. A little background, I'm a retired firefighter, Broadwater County Rural Fire District for 21 years, plus 12 years with the ambulance services. I was out of Northern Rock for about 10 years. I'll give a little background. I was DES coordinator for the county in the late 90s, and then came back in 2013. Disaster emergency service, what do? We try to prepare for a major emergency. And part of my salary, I only work half time. Part of my salary, half is paid through a FEMA grant, the other half is local taxes. Have to match that. And the best way to prepare for an emergency in any county, what we do in our county, we support law enforcement, we support fire department, we support ambulance service, we support search and rescue. These are the individuals that are going to respond first. Boys aren't going to come from Washington for days. We do rely upon our partners in Gallatin County, Clark County, just like we do in mutual aid. For the first several days, the emergency is us. One of the things I identified about 2 years ago is down in this part of the county, which is the Threeforks Rural Fire District in Broadwater County. How many of you lived here in 1961 out here where we live? How many lived here in 61? Well, those ranchers, a few people lived down the river, petitioned the Broadwater County Commissioners to form a rural fire district. It starts up at mile marker 101 Road, and everything south of the river to Jefferson and Gallatin County is in the Threeforks Rural Fire District. That's also the same area your ambulance service. So when someone dials 911, some of the calls going to Gallatin County, and with cell tower, so we're going up at Townsend, the Sheriff's Office. And they'll page out emergency services in this emergency response zone, your rural fire district, based upon where that call comes in. We try to sort that information out. If you're on a cell phone, they often ask you, what is your location? Before they ask you what you want. They want to know where you're at. Send the right service. We need, there's 32 miles in the county seat. That takes a law officer quite a few minutes to get down. And the sheriff has done a tremendous amount of trying to get some more officers here. We need a little station for the sheriff's office here. Right now, the sheriff has made arrangements with the city of Threeforks and Gallatin County Sheriff's Office to have our deputies serve in Southern County to work out of that office. But we need to have a place up here for the sheriff's office. And then also, you need a fire station. This side of the river up here in your fire district. You also need a place to park an ambulance. Now, ambulance service, fire, is volunteer. If you've got some volunteers up here that probably join the fire district. Now, Broadwater County, the northern end of the Broadwater, and everything north of not much, just one building. And we respond to all these calls. So what I have proposed, identified a need. You need a fire station out there somewhere along the highway, 387, probably north of the interstate. Park the fire trucks and park an ambulance out there. And you'll get more volunteers to respond. It's your community. And the longer it takes for volunteers to go to the fire station, get the truck out, or the ambulance out, the longer it's going to take to get your home, your heart attacks. And if they can put a sheriff's station in the same area, that would be beneficial for you guys also, rather than responding clear from the town, or the three. The deputy doesn't roll around, done a great job. So basically, that's what I identified, that need. I don't have enough yellow sheet on the back. That's the rural fire district. They're in. And some of you people, I don't know. When you dial 911 and you want an ambulance, they go. I was on a minute to tell them, we don't care. Same way nowadays, you dial 911 and you have a fire car crash, we go across the thing. Nobody cares. Firefighters do not care. Sometimes we'll meet both of them. Mark and I, one-on-one the other day, we had town man, 3-4 I was a fire department, and we had help. And that's what the dedication of these people is. The same with law enforcement and same with highway patrol. They just go where we need. So all I'm proposing is we need to have something, perhaps we should locate it in the TED, get some of their money. Now, how are you funding it? Now, what Broadwater County, the northern end did, is we put on a little bit of mill levy to start building some stations. Took a long time, a couple mills, and we started building some new stations. And right next to others. How are we going to volunteers? Well, you just have to recruit them. I think you build a station, they'll work some equipment. I think what you need is a tender, all water, and you might need a brush. We all have a lot of brush fire. And you could be in a wildland fire without being before. People have lost homes just out on the flat. So all I'm proposing is a facility of the sheriff's office, perhaps the sheriff's office needs to have a bay in there for search and rescue. Now, search and rescue, all the counties of Montana work for the sheriff. They're dispatched out of the sheriff. That's how those resources are delegated by state law. And Broadwater County, search and rescue respond all the way to the town. Now you have a nice enterprise out here called mountain bike trail. In your ambulance service, your fire department respond a lot to the sheriff's office. We're going to have a lot of accidents. The people on bikes are pretty fast. Going to get hurt, and then you bring these helicopters in and land a little bit. So maybe search and rescue needs to park something down here on a trailer, like one of those utility. That's for the sheriff's office to decide. And if the fire department wants to do that, it's up to the board of directors of the rural fire district, the board of directors of the ambulance service. All I want to do is try to get some funding for that. Some options are is we can get some USDA rural development loan grants. Possibility. There's other types of federal grants. A lot of federal grants for fire equipment. We could borrow some money, get it on 30 or 40 years. It's not very high. There's some private funds, GoFundMe, things like that. But I want the community and the Board of County Commissioners and the Board of Trustees of the Rural Fire District and the Board of Directors of the ambulance district to think about this. You got to build for your future. Now, your service area, I asked Nicole who does rural addressing. There's 444 rural assigned addresses in your fire district. And about 15 of those are commercial addresses. The rest of those are houses. Now, some of these may only be a lot that somebody's building on. You got to have a rural address here for electricity. So some of those may not. I don't know what the population is. Every county estimates about 1,000 people live down in here. 2,000 people live up in Townsend. The city's not growing much. All the growth of Broadwater County is rural. There's about 7,000 people in Broadwater County, we guesstimate, based upon what we can come up with estimates. We're a rural county, we have a lot of needs, and we have little funding. But we do the best we can. Mutual aid or other counties. To prepare for emergency, you have a responsibility yourselves to be able to stay in your homes for 72 hours without electricity and without water. Like I live in the country, I don't have electricity, I don't have well water. I have a generator, you take that in and get water. But anyway, it's a shared responsibility between individuals and the different responders and the elected officials. Do you have any questions for me? It's a long night. Yes, sir.
We already donated land to IWS for your fire department.
Very good.
You don't need the money for my land.
That's excellent. That saves us a lot of money. A lot of people are moving here because it's cheaper to buy land. It's cheaper long-term taxes than across the river or in the northern end of the Lewis Park. We're going to be a growth rural county. Any other questions for me? Yes, sir.
I'm ignorant when it comes to this, so excuse me if I ask the wrong
No,
question.
you go ahead and ask anyone.
Is there any money allocated for that in the property taxes that we pay?
No, sir. Not at this time, no.
And there's none in the entire county, is that correct?
For anybody?
Right.
Well, you get a few mills, as well as the people in the Broadwater County Rural Fire District, they're going to take 3 or 4 mills for the operation of the fire district that pays for gasoline, electricity to keep the lights on. And we also, in Broadwater County, had a little bit of a mill levy for building stations and a truck fund. But we do get some money from the subdivision.
Yeah.
And that money goes into the Rural Fire District, Board of Trustees to spend, not the Board of
So in this part of the county, we also help to pay that, those mill fees?
Only in your district? Yes.
Yes.
The fire chief
Your
can
mill
take-
fee, excuse me, your mill fees go to the Three Forks Fire District. You can look on your taxes and you can figure out what you pay.
Perfect.
Just like your road.
But I mean, we're not paying for any fire or emergency services somewhere else in this county. For Townsend, none of our property taxes go towards that.
Except for law enforcement.
Except for law.
Law enforcement comes from all taxes in Broadwater County government. Yes, sir.
Mister, what does it take to initiate those 3 substations you just described?
One substation,
I mean,
one to house all
okay,
three.
well, excuse me, I stand corrected.
If you want a fire station, you talk to the trustees of the rural fire district.
And how about a substation for law enforcement?
You talk to the Board of County Commissioners and the sheriff. Any questions? Thank you for your time. Oh, Barbara,
I'm
you want to
Barbara
say?
Mutter, and I'm on the board for your Three Forks Area Ambulance District, which mirrors the Three Forks Rural Fire District. We do not collect any tax money. We are solely funded. We have volunteers. We are solely funded by transport. So say you have a breathing issue and we respond to your house and we transport you to Bozeman Deaconess Hospital, we charge your insurance. We absolutely do not collect $1 of tax money to fund Three Forks Area Ambulance. We have 3 ambulances in our bay. Last year we ran 318 calls. Just so you know, we have volunteers who do their training and whatnot to be EMTs, and we have 18, and out of that we have about 5 that are really active. But that's in every organization. That's a volunteer-based organization. That's just across the United States. But I did want to tell you that a lot of people are under the impression that we do receive money from taxes, and we do not, just so you know. And we mirror Three Forks Rural Fire District, Willow Creek Rural Fire District, and Clarkston Service Area District number 6. So our ambulance service district is 550 square miles. 162 calls as of today.
Thank you.
And I would like to see, my vision is, I would like to see an ambulance in this vicinity. This area is growing leaps and bounds. We're going to be the bedroom community of Gallatin County, which is one of the fastest counties that's growing in the United States right now. And I'd like to see a fire truck in there for a quick response, an ambulance in there for a quicker response, and our sheriff's department, and thank you, Sheriff Meehan, for being able to hire a detective, a new sheriff down here in the southern part of our county when we actually didn't have much of any law enforcement backup. And I do want to tell you, we had several calls for stage for law enforcement, for suicide, stage for law enforcement, for domestic. And our people sat outside and said to dispatch, there's nobody coming. We're sitting in the street, is there somebody coming? And dispatch came back and said, we have no law enforcement coming. And they came back up and said, what do we do? And I don't know if you people watch the news, but every day first responders are losing their life out there. Domestic problems are the worst emergency to ever respond to. And I did 7 years on Threeforks ambulance, just so you know, and 32 years as a firefighter EMT. So I'm retired now, obviously, but I'm just saying, this became absolutely not acceptable. We cannot do that. We cannot send these volunteers in who don't have bulletproof vests on to a domestic when they have no idea what's happening behind that door. We've lost 2 law enforcement officers in our area, and that's too many. We're done. We've got to do something better here. And this area up here is growing, and all of you are saying that. We've got to do something better for emergency services. It's all about making it to your problem. It could be your mother, your daughter, you. So that's my vision of it. And Public Works needs to be part of that too, because if we can't grade the road with the snow to get an ambulance to you, we're all done. So Public Works has to be part of this discussion at the table as well. So, you know, I don't know how much it's all going to cost. Hopefully we can look into all of these grants that are available. That's what we're doing right now. Mike's been looking into that rural development, USDA rural development. I've been working with it in Gallatin County, looking for a grant for our ambulance. Obviously, we want to keep this cost down, but everybody deserves to have public safety. It's just the bottom line. It's the bottom line. You know, you guys can make it on a gravel road, but if we can't get to you in your time of need, that's pretty sad. Anyway.
Just so you know, I'm Keith Lonnie, I'm the Threeforks Fire Chief. I've been on the fire department for 29 years. And what she was saying is right about needing the building out here. And as of right now, I have 4 members on my department that live out in this area. And for them, they have to go all the way into town to get on a truck to even make a call. So that would improve a lot of that where I already have 4. And I know the old saying, Field of Dreams, build it, they will come. If we get a station out here, we'll have way more firefighters out here. Because I've lost many of firefighters because they had to travel all the way into town for trainings and just responded to a call and they had to make a truck or something, so they go back home. So I know a station would improve on my part, having a lot more firefighters to help. As of now, I have 16 firefighters, and like Barb said, I have 6 that are active.
And lower your insurance cost as well.
Yeah, insurance would go down.
That's right. Your
You'll
ISO.
have another, it's the
ISO. Insurance Service Organization.
You need to live within so many miles, I think it's 5 miles of a fire station, and your insurance drops way. But right now, a lot of you guys are outside of that 10-mile mark right now, so your insurance coverage is not as good.
Can I ask you one question? One of the things I struggle with government buildings is they're really expensive to maintain. Why do we need to build a great big brick fancy fire building?
I'm thinking pole barn.
Is that what we're going to get? Pole barn? Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'm thinking just, we need a place to park vehicles in that's secure enough, and it's
That's right.
That, the
Keep that
basic
water
is
from
always.
freezing.
Water prices.
I'm not looking for no fancy fire station, I just want a place to park.
That's what I, yeah, probably support that.
Sheriff Bannon.
You know what I mean?
Sheriff Bannon, what do you say?
We can.
In regards to what a building looks like, and so what is required for fire or what's required for medical is completely different than what we require. Because one, anything that we deal with has to be secure. So one of the things we're dealing with right now, and just so you guys know, the deputy we hired, I had a detective that resigned back last year in November and went down to Miles City. Marvin Braddock, I don't know if you guys knew him or not. But I never filled that position. I still haven't filled that position in its full context, because the fact is I needed somebody down here. Once Mason was gone, you guys didn't have any law enforcement presence. So we took our new hire, Lauren Carosella. I stole him from the Belgrade PD. Surprise, surprise. He's actually building a house out here in Rolling Glen. His district, this is a Three Forks deputy. This is something that we haven't done before. His travel district is Milligan Canyon to 437. That's as far as he gets to go north. And if he needs to go farther north, he gets to go to Toston Bridge. That's his area of concern. I want him down here to deal with this. But in that same breath, if he has to come in, if you guys haven't realized, we have a huge drug problem going on right now. And so we're seizing quite a bit of heroin, methamphetamine. We just had an individual 2 nights ago decided that instead of getting a charge for methamphetamine and fentanyl, decided to put it inside herself, and she is currently in ICU in St. Pete's, probably not going to survive because the bag broke. So we have a lot of issues with that. So if he comes down here, what I need is something that's going to be secure. It is going to be a brick wall.
I understand that.
You know, I have to be able to secure evidence, secure money. Yeah, and the fact is that there's times where Country Jam, Rockin' the Rivers, Three Forks Rodeo, you know, I've got guys that are going to come down here and work that area for that, but that doesn't mean that they're going to have the ability to get up to the detention center in Townsend with a prisoner. They might have to put them in a holding cell. So that whole dynamic for what we're looking at in a substation is going to be different than what can get away with in a fire or medical situation.
Well, and I think, I understand you need that, and I mean, we can have a building for you guys, and next to it, we can have like a pole barn or something to cheapen the cost around.
And what I guess, and Mike and I have talked about this, and what I guess I envision, I was down in Manning, South Carolina, where Mason was originally from. And they have on one side of their building down there is fire medical, and the other side is law enforcement. And so it has common areas for bathrooms and things of that nature, but it also has an ability to have an emergency operations center, dispatch center. So if something happens in our area that we can't communicate on this effectively, at least we can set up something right there in that area, and fire and medical and law enforcement all work together in conjunction so our mission continues. And one of the hardest things that I get people to understand is just because we have a bad situation, the crime doesn't stop. Our calls don't stop. And so we have to be able to continue to move forward and make sure our mission is met. So I kind of envision the same thing, Keith. And one of the things I don't realize people understand is here in the last probably 4 or 5 months, somewhere give or take, I'm not really sure, but Commissioner Folkford, Mike Conkey, myself, Keith, Barb, we've all sat in a room, Jody Moore, trying to develop a emergency services plan, I guess is the best way to describe it. How do we address the needs of this community down here? How do we find the funding? How do we put things in place? How do we get you guys that have been left behind the services that you need? And so if you haven't met Jody, she's tenacious, and she will keep us on our toes and keep us on task fairly good. So we're working towards that. It's going to be a slow process. What Mike said, I did talk to the USDA guy in regards to grants. You know, it's the grant component of the USDA money is minimal. It's $400,000 to $500,000, but the loan capacity is in several million. And so we've had these conversations. We appreciate the land donation wholeheartedly. Is it something that's going to be able to, and I guess when we look at this, is what we're talking about today, the needs that we have today, is that what we're building for? Are we building a structure? Are we building services to meet today's needs, which is going to be built 4 years down the road, or 3 years, or 2 years, or whatever it may be? Or are we going to build for what we're looking at and anticipating in the next 10 to 15? And so when I put this in perspective, when I became sheriff in 2015, I ended the year with 8,574 calls for service. At the end of 2018, 24,640. So as what you guys see in your growth down here, I'm seeing the same thing, and I'm doing it with less people. And so that's the things that we're trying to do. How do we get ahead of the curve? How do we have enough time to work on these things when your call load just went up 25 or 3 times what it was beforehand? So yes, Keith.
Sure, just so I can go along with that, I had 135 calls last year, and we just hit 95 yesterday. So, yeah, all the calls are going up, no matter what it is in emergency services.
So we're trying, and I guess that's the thing. I was hoping Lauren was going to be here tonight. Unfortunately, today's he's kind of part of that whole overdose thing, so he's got his hands tied. But he's going to be down here, and I did hear some things about speeding in subdivisions. Just so we're clear, and I did talk to one of the landowners here. If it's a subdivision that's deemed a private road, I have no authority under state statute to write a speeding ticket. I can't write speeding tickets on private property. So if it's a private road, I can't help it. I can come out and patrol it, I can stop and warn them, but I can't write tickets unless they fall into the careless section, reckless, DUI, driving suspended. We're very limited on what we can and can't do on private property. So that's, when people go, why are we getting more tickets down here? Well, it depends on where you live. If it's a private road, I can't do anything with it. Okay? And I start violating people's rights when I start doing those things, and I can't do that. I wanted to make that note. Am I missing anything, Darryl?
No, you kind of stole my thunder.
I apologize.
So I was just going to mention that to the folks that we are meeting monthly to discuss their needs. So anyway, that is ongoing.
And I will say this, the people that don't understand is that the city of Three Forks, and I know Mayor Gifford now is here, and before it was Mayor Hamilton, we had a discussion. The city owns the building of the sheriff's office in Gallatin County, but between the city of Three Forks and Gallatin County Sheriff's Office, we were able to engage in an interlocal agreement for office space. That's why Lauren will be working out of there. And so we're trying to do everything we can to get somebody here for you. And I did have my undersheriff here, my captain's still back there. So if any time you guys have questions, just catch us and we'll try to answer or make, listen to your concerns or whatever it may be. So I think that's all I have. Unless somebody has a question. Okay.
Thanks, man. Okay, we will move on to the expanded solid waste District 2 and 2 there.
Sorry. All right. So there is a map that was back on the table, and it shows the Broadwater County Solid Waste District boundaries. It's actually the same boundaries as the Broadwater County Fire District.
Do you have any more copies of it?
I don't. I'll give you this one today. But it's the same. So it's the 101 road. It's the solid waste district. So I don't know. I've had a few calls from people in this area down here that wanted to get a permit, wondering what their permit was for our solid waste facility. So just a little bit of the backstory. When I started last year, I inherited a deficit in the solid waste program. Solid waste is an enterprise fund, and it has to fund itself. That is the rule. That's the law. And I inherited this deficit that we had to deal with. One thing that I did is I took a look at where's all this waste coming from. We were getting a lot of out-of-district waste into our canister sites. And a lot of it was contractors that would come and dump their construction waste because they have to pay in Helena, they have to pay in Gallatin County. If they go to a canister site, they don't have to pay all of a sudden. And construction waste is heavy with all the building that's been going on. So one thing that we did is we decided that we were going to change our operations, and we decided to close down our canister sites and only open them on the weekends, gate them when they're open, they're attended. And we also had to increase our solid waste fee. Now the fee that people pay, it's a fee, it's not a tax, it's actually a fee. So the people in the district have to pay that fee because we provide solid waste services. But if you're out of the district and you want to be able to use our canister sites, you just have to pay the fee. It's an annual fee. We issue a permit, and you can go to any one of the 5 sites 5 canister sites in the county, or you can bring stuff up to the transfer station. So the whole purpose of this was just to determine whether or not people in this area wanted us to expand our solid waste district. Did you want us to expand it? I believe right now, if you have garbage pickup services, Republic Services out of Bozeman are the ones that have the permit to be able to come and haul your garbage. Otherwise, you should be hauling your garbage to Logan landfill instead of one of the Broadwater County canister sites. So if you want to be included in that, because it's convenient for you to go to Toston or Raidersburg, or you go to Helena all the time, and it's easier for you to dump, all you have to do is pay the assessment, and I can put you on the roll. I would notify Department of Revenue to keep that assessment on your tax records. So
How much?
it's $185 a year. Yep. So, and that's for household waste. What's that?
Is it per weekend normally?
No, so what we have walk-in gates. We actually have walk-in gates. We have a guy people can walk in and dump their garbage. But that's for vehicle access. The site in Townsend is open 6 days a week. The same for the transfer station. We're open 6 days a week up there. If you have construction waste, it needs to come up there because we don't accept construction waste at any of our transfer sites. We just don't have the room for that.
Mary, so I guess for these folks, they would use either the Raidersburg or the Toston.
For the cost, yeah.
So they're open 2 days a week.
Yes.
Alternating times.
Yes,
So
thank you.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So we go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So actually 4 days on this end of the county for people. So there's about 8 or 9 miles between the site at Boston and the site in Raidersburg. And because of the road construction that's going on, one decision we made was we were going to close one site originally because it costs a lot of money to, run the canister truck down there back and forth for fuel and personnel costs. So if you want to be included in that, you can get a hold of me, or you can just come to the county clerk and recorder's office, pay the fee, they will issue you your permit for that. So, do you have any questions at all?
There isn't just like a day fee, if I go to Logan, I just pay a fee.
No.
If there's nobody.
No, well, we can do that. We can do that. I do have, so my tenants do have the ability to issue you an invoice.
Okay.
Okay?
I pay them there, I send it back.
No, you don't pay in there. What we'll do is then we'll send you, you can either pay with that invoice, or we can put together another invoice and send it to you.
If I send you the money, then I save the money and the effort to do something else instead. That's easier if I can spend it.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
Trying to save.
and we increased the fee actually. The fee hadn't been increased since 2001. And I got to looking at the number of fee payers versus what our needs were for that department. Like I said, it has to fund itself. We have a transfer station, but we also have what's called a Class 3 landfill. And what we put in that landfill right now are tires and concrete. We also have a burn site up there, so we take clean wood and we can burn it. But everything that comes into the transfer station that's garbage gets dumped on the floor, and then we take it and we load it into a transfer trailer, and that goes to Lewis Park County landfill for disposal. So it's kind of a neat operation if you guys have never seen that before. Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, can I get that now?
Yes.
So we'll open it up to public comment. We'd like to limit everyone to 3 minutes if we can, if everyone has anything to say for public comment about anything not that we discussed tonight or anything else.
I'd like to thank you for your efforts. I know it's hard, I know we're kind of hard nosed. I appreciate you guys coming up here and listening to us. I hope that we can work together to fix the problem.
Well, I think for the number of questions that we're asking, I think we probably need to be down here more often. So I think that we'll probably make an effort to do that. And, yeah, thank you.
And I'd also thank you for coming tonight and spending 3 hours here with some topics. I think it's more than we need more often, so thank you for showing up.
feel about our county attorney having to go wait for money for the Ferris case. Yes, I feel about our county attorney having to wait for money for the Ferris case.
Can you hear me? Say again, I couldn't hear you.
I was asking the commissioners how they feel about you having to go ask other counties for money to prosecute the Ferris case.
I can talk about that, or what do you guys want to do?
To me, I think it's a shame and a disservice to our public service people that we have to come up, we spend about $300,000 in pill on the prosecution of this guy, and in the meantime, he sits with the public defender's office with an unlimited budget. They can do anything they want for as much money as they want to spend. In the meantime, our budget takes a tremendous hit, plus we're out asking the neighboring counties to help us with the prosecution of this guy, which is ridiculous. And we're not the only county that this happens to. Any small county that has a very limited budget, if one of your officers gets murdered in this situation, you're stuck in the same thing. We're very fortunate that we have bill money coming. Other than that, I don't know how we would finance the trial. And it's let alone that we have to finance that, but we have to fight against somebody that has basically $5 million in the public defender's office. How is that justice for our people? Or for anybody's people, as far as that goes? So if that's it, we will adjourn, and we thank you very much for your attendance.
Thank you.